Chapter 3441. Rumble. Croc, croc, croc. A terrifying rumbling sound rang out high up in the sky, and the mountainous palm that blotted out the sky descended. Everywhere it passed, the surrounding space was instantly pulled tight, and then, unable to withstand the terrifying pressure, it was directly torn apart. This frightening handprint was heading straight for the 9th level Chaos Beast. So scary. Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost were tens of thousands of meters away. When they felt the pressure from the sky, their eyes trembled and they immediately retreated. The earth-shattering power was too strong, as if it could destroy everything in an instant. Roar! At that moment, the 9th Extreme Chaos Beast felt threatened. Its huge body paused in the air. It suddenly raised its head and roared angrily. Its body released a scarlet halo that surged like a ripple. In the next moment, the 9th Extreme Chaos Beast roared and charged directly towards the palm print. Rumble. Bam, bam, bam. Immediately after, the handprint landed and bombarded the 9-fold Chaos Beast head-on. The void rumbled as if it was going to explode. Heaven and earth shook violently, and the space tens of thousands of meters around them actually collapsed in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. Terrifying rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, as if there were tens of thousands of lightning bolts roaring in the void. The crowd was shocked by the scene in front of them. They were horrified and did not know how to express the shock in their hearts. After a while, the chaotic void calmed down a little. The crimson behemoth stood in the sky like a huge ball of flame. And at that moment, a black-robed figure appeared in the higher void. He stood coldly in the void. Just by standing there, he was like a mountain or an ocean, releasing a boundless aura and power. This was a black-robed elder. He looked very old, and should be an old monster who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. His eyes were cold and sharp, exuding a terrifying dark aura. At that moment, he was staring at Nyetion. Apart from killing intent in his eyes, there was also unconcealable shock. He said in a low voice, "You can actually still live after taking my palm head on. You really surprised me." Lord Taibai jinxing. On the other side, Qian Longxia looked at the black-clothed old man and exclaimed in surprise. Her pretty face also froze. She recognized this black-clad old man. His name was He Yueyin, and his nickname was the Black Evil Monarch. His status in the Myriad Star Pavilion was even higher than hers. He was a star venerate. That was right. The Myriad Star Pavilion also had a star venerate. However, it seemed to be a symbol of status, somewhat different from the star venerates with forbidden astral souls. Qian Longxi knew that the weakest star venerate in the Myriad Star Pavilion was a 9th Heaven Righteousness Great Sage. They were much stronger than her, a 9th Heaven Charm Holy Disciple. Black Moon Flame was not considered strong among the star venerates of the Myriad Star Pavilion. However, he was still a 9th Heaven Heavenly Justice Great Sage. Sage Mortal Sage had 3 realms: Heavenly Charm, Heavenly Mandate, and Heavenly Justice. Tianyi Stage 9 was already at the peak of the Mortal Sage stage. It was not an exaggeration to say that a martial artist at the 9th level of Heavenly Righteousness could destroy a domain if he used his full strength. At this moment, Black Moon Flame's palm landed directly on the 9th Extreme Chaos Beast. However, the 9th Extreme Chaos Beast actually blocked it. This was too terrifying. It should be known that Nyetion only had the strength of a 9th Heaven Pseudo-Sage. He had not even touched the edge of the Sage stage, much less the 9th Heaven Heavenly Justice stage. The difference in cultivation between Nyetion and Black Moon Flame was not an exaggeration to say that it was like a 3-year-old baby and a 30-year-old man. However, with such a difference in cultivation, Nyetion actually blocked Black Moon Flame's palm. One could imagine how shocking this scene was. What exactly was that crimson beast? How could it come out of Nyetion's body? How could Nyetion's martial body withstand such terrifying power? Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost Boundless were both completely stunned, especially Tang 13. The shock in her heart was indescribable. Back in the 3,000 small worlds, she had personally seen Niet Tion use the ninth extreme Chaos Beast to defeat enemies stronger than him. At that time, Tank 13 had been curious. How could a martial artist's primordial spirit be so powerful? However, after meeting Niet Tion several times, the latter did not use the ninth extreme Chaos Beast anymore. She had originally thought that after reaching the godly state, Niet Tion's primordial spirit would be weakened, and so he did not use the ninth extreme Chaos Beast anymore. But now, she understood that Niet Tion did not use the ninth extreme Chaos Beast because it was too scary. Using the cultivation of a ninth heaven heavenly justice stage to fight against a ninth heaven heavenly justice stage martial artist was too scary. Brat, you are Niet Tion? At this time, Black Moon Flame spoke. His voice was not loud, but it was enough to send shivers down the spines of every martial artist. I don't care who you are. Niet Tion looked at Black Moon Flame, his eyes cold and filled with a terrifying demonic aura. He said word by word, "Those who stand in my way die. Is that so?" Black Moon Flame laughed coldly, as if he had heard a joke. Indeed, the current Niet Tion was indeed a joke in front of him. A ninth heaven heavenly justice stage, fake sage, was threatening him so directly. If that wasn't a joke, what was? However, the fact that Niet Tion could hold out until now surprised him. He already knew quite a lot about Niet Tion's identity, but the appearance of the ninth extreme Chaos Beast in front of him shocked him. He had never imagined that there was such a terrifying thing in Niet Tion's body other than the Star Essence Stone. Kill! At this time, Niet Tion did not say anything else. He directly roared, and the ninth extreme Chaos Beast rushed out like a mad dragon, causing the void to rumble and the sky to tremble. You must have a death wish. Seeing this, Black Moon Flame spoke coldly. He directly struck out with his palm. Suddenly, a ball of black flames appeared in the void, burning fiercely, filling the space within tens of thousands of meters. The violent aura burned everything. Boom! The next moment, the black flames formed a flaming blade in the sky, continuously releasing a dark, murderous aura towards the ninth extreme Chaos Beast. Bam! Following that, the black flaming blade landed directly on the back of the ninth extreme Chaos Beast. There was a muffled sound, and a huge bloody hole was forcefully opened up. Immediately, blood spurted out and dyed half the sky red. Roar! At that moment, the ninth extreme Chaos Beast roared angrily. Its huge claws swept across the sky, and a scarlet blade tore through the air at extreme speed. Lord Taibai jinxing, be careful. The sudden scene made Qian Longxia's beautiful eyes tremble, and she could not help but scream. Black Moon Flame frowned. His figure moved, and he moved hundreds of meters like a ghost. However, he was still a step too late. The scarlet blade swept past, and the sharp aura left a bright red mark on Black Moon Flame's face. It was like a sword scar. Chapter 3442. A brutal battle. High up in the sky, He Yuian's face was extremely gloomy. Black flames were suddenly released from his body, making him look dark and ruthless. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that Niet Tion would actually injure him and leave a bloody mark on his face. This bloody wound did not injure him. However, it completely obliterated his dignity as a Star Venerate. He was a Star Lord, a ninth-grade Heavenly Righteousness Great Lord. How could he tolerate being injured by a ninth-grade Realm Pseudo-Sage? At this time, the nine-extreme Chaos Beast suddenly moved. Although there was a huge, bloody hole on its back, it was still very fast as it rushed toward the Star Forbidden Space. It was obvious that Niet Tion wanted to break the Star Forbidden Space and stop the Mother Sacrificial Array. Trying to break the Star Forbidden Space? Impossible. He Yuian's cold eyes trembled. With a low roar, a ball of black flames surged out of his palm. Suddenly, the void was filled with an extremely dense black fiendish chi. In the next moment, the black flames in He Yuian's hand turned into a black spear. The black flames on the spear burned as if it wanted to burn everything. Niet Tion, you are not bad. You are indeed the one chosen by the star Origin Stone. Unfortunately, you are too weak now. If I come personally, you will die without a doubt. He Yin said coldly. Then, the spear in his hand swept across the void. Suddenly, a terrifying aura was released. Boom! In the void, black flames burned fiercely. A thick black aura covered the sky. A black spear shadow appeared. It was like a black dragon that had rushed out of the 9 heavens' imprisonment. It flew towards the 9 extreme chaos beast. At this moment, everyone felt their hearts tremble. They actually felt like their souls were being torn apart. This is the Black Moon demonic blade. Qian Longxie looked at He Yueyin in the sky. Her beautiful eyes trembled, and she could not help but exclaim. The Black Moon demonic blade was forged by He Yueyin by fusing the primordial spirit spear with the Black Moon core. It contained the Black Moon Qi and the power of He Yueyin's bloodline. Unexpectedly, He Yueyin used the Black Moon demonic blade to kill a 9th-grade pseudo-sage like Nie Tian. Boom! At this moment, the black spear shadow in the void rumbled over violently, causing the void to tremble nonstop, as though it was going to collapse at any moment. Damn it! As Nie Tian stepped onto the 9 extreme chaos beast back, he could feel a terrifying suppressive force coming from the void. That kind of killing aura seemed to be able to tear heaven and earth apart. Roar! The 9th level chaos beast roared, and its huge body shot up into the sky. A scarlet halo was suddenly released from its back, forming a pair of wings in the sky that looked like the sunset. Boom! In the next moment, a pair of scarlet wings flapped in the air, and a terrifying aura condensed into a scarlet storm in the air, stirring up the space in all directions, and blasted forward. Boom! Then, the 2 terrifying forces clashed together, causing the space around them to tremble and actually start to collapse. Boom, boom, boom. Endless space-time storms rushed out. The space was chaotic. It was like the end of the world. The figure of the 9-fold chaos beast was forced to retreat under the impact of a huge force. Bloody wounds appeared on its huge body as if it had been cut by a sharp blade. Blood flowed continuously, looking extremely miserable. As for Black Moon Yin, who was high in the sky, he suffered the same impact and could not help but retreat by several dozen meters. Black Moon Yin stabilized himself. He was not injured, but his face was so sullen that it looked like it would drip blood. He, a 9th-layer sky winged star venerate, was actually knocked back by Nie Tian. Evil blade burning the heavens. In the next moment, Black Moon Yan's eyes turned cold, and a murderous intent filled them. Boom! The Black Moon evil blade in his hand suddenly trembled, and it twisted violently in the air. Boundless black flames surged out and formed a boundless black flame spear image in the air, pressing down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian, you are dead for sure. At this moment, Black Moon Yin smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with excitement and fervor, filled with a perverted sense of satisfaction. Looking at the Black Moon flame, Nie Tian let out a deep roar like a ferocious beast. Really? In the next moment, Xiao Qin's body suddenly released a bloody aura that surged in the air, reeking of blood. And within that blood qi, there was actually a powerful god-fiend power. Nie Tian burned his own blood qi and merged it with the god-fiend power. He ruthlessly smashed his palm down, and strands of power directly infused into the 9 extreme chaos beast. He infused his own blood qi and bloodline power into the 9 extreme chaos beast, stimulating it to burst forth with even more horrifying power. Boom! In an instant, a horrifying aura burst forth from the 9 extreme chaos beast body. A scarlet light that looked like blood soared into the sky. Rumble! Bang! 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 The instant the scarlet light passed by the black flame spear image, it actually shattered it. How can this be? Black Moon Yan's eyes trembled, and his expression changed. He could not help but exclaim, "Bang!" Then, before he could even react, the crimson light bombarded him. A muffled sound rang out in the air, and he was sent flying, leaving behind a trail of blood in the air. Lord Star Venerate. The sudden scene made Qian Liangxia's eyes tremble, and he shouted in horror. He completely did not expect that with Black Moon Yan's strength, he would actually be sent flying. The others were also stunned, and they all gasped. They could not react for a long time. Nietian was too terrifying. He could actually release such horrifying power. At this time, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast did not chase over. Instead, it flapped its wings and flew straight towards the star-forbidden space. Nietian activated the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast power not only to fight against Black Moon Yin, but also to break the star-forbidden space. Break! In an instant, Nietian and the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast arrived outside the star-forbidden space. He shouted, and the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast stretched out a huge claw and grabbed the star-forbidden space. Boom! The star-forbidden space roared and shook violently. A huge aura was suddenly released, like a landslide and a tsunami. It was extremely terrifying, but the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast was like a mountain, and it did not move at all. However, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast attack could not break the star-forbidden space. Damn it! Nietian roared, as if he had gone mad. The star-forbidden space was too terrifying. Even if Nietian used his blood chi and bloodline power to activate the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast, he could not break it directly. Crack! Following that, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast's palm landed again, and it hit the star-forbidden space. Outside the star-forbidden space, a crack actually appeared. It's going to break. Nietian's eyes trembled, and he was pleasantly surprised. Then, he controlled the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast, and its 2 huge claws landed at the same time, wanting to directly tear the star-forbidden space apart. Chapter 3443. The first cry, huh? The sudden change caused Nietian's eyes to tremble, and he exclaimed in shock. He did not expect a small star-forbidden zone to possess such terrifying power. Nietian, you're dead. At this moment, a ruthless and murderous voice rang out in the sky. Black Yuyan's entire body was drenched in blood. The aura around him was like a raging wave that erupted. Black flames were incomparably violent, surging wildly in the void. In the next moment, an enormous figure appeared behind Black Moon Flame. It was tens of thousands of meters tall, and it looked like a demonic beast from hell. Its entire body released violent black flames. Spirit of the Flame Demon. Qian Liangxia's eyes trembled as he exclaimed. In order to kill Nietian, Black Moon Flame even used the spirit of the Flame Demon. The spirit of the Flame Demon was the power of the Black Moon clan's bloodline. It was extremely terrifying. Roar! At this moment, the spirit of the Flame Demon roared furiously. Instantly, the space within 100,000 meters was enveloped by the tyrannical Black Moon Demon flames. It was pitch black as if doomsday had arrived. The others looked at the spirit of the Flame Demon, and their eyes trembled uncontrollably. The shock in their hearts could not be any greater. Nietian, everything ends here. At this moment, Black Moon Flame's cold voice rang out. It was extremely cold, and it fell into everyone's ears like a sentence of death. Kill! In the next moment, Black Moon Flame roared, and the spirit of the Flame Demon behind him unleashed the Black Moon Demon flames on its entire body. The demon flame aura in the void seemed to burn everything. Boom, boom, boom. The void was filled with endless booms, as if the world was about to collapse in the endless demon flames. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the spirit of the Flame Demon slammed its palm down, and immediately a sea of demon flames descended from the void. Within the sea of flames, countless flame demon beasts appeared. They roared, and like thick dark clouds, they crazily pressed towards Nietian. In the blink of an eye, Nietian felt the space around him tighten, as a violent strangling force pressed down on him, sealing the space around him, rendering him immobile. At the same time, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast was restrained by the power of the star formation, unable to move. Nietian and the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast fell into a life and death situation at the same time. Boom, boom, boom. In the space, Countless flame demon beasts pressed over. The void rumbled unceasingly, collapsing unceasingly. Nietian felt the space around him being sealed by an invisible force, making him unable to move at all. Nietian die. High up in the sky, Black Moon Flame's voice resounded, arrogant and cold. At this moment of life and death, Nietian's eyes were bloodshot, and he roared like a wild beast, "I can't die." In the next second, his eyes turned pitch black again. On the corner of his eyes, the demonic extermination stamp reappeared. Above his eyes, an incomparably dark eye power surged out, instantly entering the body of the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. Nietian used his eye power to activate the power of the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast once again. Roar! The violent and dark eye power struck the body of the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast, causing it to roar. Following this, the aura of its entire body suddenly increased, and an even more frightening scarlet halo appeared, rushing in all directions. Crack, crack, crack. Bam! Following this, the wild power of the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast was activated, and suddenly, the star formation immediately collapsed. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, countless flame demon beasts came crashing down like flaming boulders, smashing into Nietian and the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. At this moment, Nietian could no longer feel pain. He only felt that his body was swaying in the air. He tried his best to turn around, wanting to see Imo Rushi, to see his and Imo Rushi's child. But at this moment, he was too weak. Even turning around was very difficult, and he had almost used up the last bit of strength in his body. He had used up too much strength, and his blood chi was almost depleted. His martial body had long been pushed to its limits, and he could not hold on any longer. Bam! 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 The giant flame demon beast landed on the 9 Extremes Chaos Beast. Amidst a series of dull thuds, bloody holes appeared on the 9 Extremes Chaos Beast body. Its body was completely dyed red with blood, and even its bones were shattered. Nietian, Tang 13, and Desolate Ghost trembled when they saw this scene. They did not know what to do. At this moment, they only hated themselves for being so weak that they could not help Nietian at all. He is actually still holding on. Qian Longxie looked at Nietian, and her eyes, which were originally as cold as ice, could not help but tremble, and there was a faint trace of moisture in them. She could not understand how a martial artist had to have such a strong heart to be able to hold on until now. A long time ago, Nietian had already been on the edge of his limits, but he had been holding on until now. Even in the most hopeless situation, Nietian had never given up. His heart was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. But at this moment, Nietian could not hold on any longer. His strength had been depleted. He had done everything, but his strong heart could not make up for his limited strength. His heart didn't die, but his body couldn't move. Die. High up in the sky, Black Moon Flame laughed maniacally, his eyes blazing with madness. The future Star Sky Sacred Leader had been killed by him, and this was something that he could not be more excited about. Roar! At this time, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast roared, its eyes flashing red. Just like Nietian, it did not surrender, but its body could not hold on any longer. Nietian used his blood chi, bloodline power, and eye power to push its body to the limit. Even the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast could not hold on under such extreme conditions. Everything seemed to be over. All the perseverance, resistance, and unyieldingness were about to come to an end. However, at the most extreme moment, something strange happened. Wah! The cry of an infant suddenly rang out in the void, like a sound that represented endless hope. Everyone's eyes widened as they exclaimed in surprise. Then, they turned to look at the star Forbidden Space. The starry Forbidden Space was no longer protected by the starry Forbidden Spirit formation. However, that region of space was still an independent existence. It was like a sphere of light floating in space. That child has been born. Qian Longxie couldn't see what was happening in the star Forbidden Space, But that cry was the first cry of a newborn Ing after it was born. The child in Mo Rushi's womb had arrived in the world. My child! Nietion's heart skipped a beat when he heard that cry. He turned his head abruptly, and his pitch-black eyes returned to normal. His eyes were filled with tears. Chapter 34:44. Domain Sanctification. Nietion's eyes brimmed with tears as he heard the cries. His and Mo Rushi's child was born. However, this also meant that Mo Rushi was in danger. The moment the child was born should be the most promising moment for them. However, this was the most hopeless moment for Nietion. His heart felt like it was being sliced by a knife. It was as if countless sharp blades were stabbing his heart, tearing it apart bit by bit and dripping blood. The despair made it hard for him to breathe. It was as if there was a bottomless abyss in front of him. He was falling deeper and deeper into the abyss, as if there was no end in sight. Nietion, the moment you die, the moment your child is born, are you feeling hopeless? At that moment, Black Moon Flame's voice echoed out from high above. His voice was like the most cold-blooded blade that pierced into Nietion's heart. Nietion let out a low roar like a dying beast. The pain, hatred, unwillingness, unyieldingness, and tearing in his eyes were enough to make one's heart tremble with fear. Qianlongxia's eyes were filled with tears as he watched the scene unfold before him. The look in Nietion's eyes and expression caused her soul to tremble. Nietion, is your path and your legend going to end just like this? The ghost monarch's eyes were trembling as he murmured softly. He did not feel hopeless. Instead, he seemed to be anticipating something. Nietion. At that moment, Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost finally realized what was going on. They let out low roars and charged towards Nietion. Two ants. Black Moon Flame's lips twitched when he saw Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost figures. He sneered and made his move, intending to kill them. Wah! However, at that moment, another cry was heard. Along with it was a formless yet terrifying life force. Boom! The invisible life force surged in the void and spread in all directions. Everyone's eyes widened. At that instant, they felt an endless hope. Boom! As the vital aura swept past Nietion's body, a powerful energy fluctuation actually appeared in his body. Nietion's pupils suddenly shrank, and he couldn't help but cry out in shock. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's eyes trembled, and he exclaimed in surprise, "Bloodline resonance." This was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment Nietion's child was born, its first cry contained an aura of life. However, it was blocked by the star-forbidden space. As for the second cry, the star-forbidden space was unable to block it. The life energy released by the newborn baby resonated strongly with Nietion's bloodline. The Ghost Emperor had never given up. He had always believed that Nietion's path and Nietion's legend would continue. Bloodline resonance was the turning point that the Ghost Emperor was waiting for. Black Moon Flame felt the fluctuations of life in the air, and his face sank as he cried out in surprise. He didn't expect that there would be a chance to turn things around at this time. Boom! At that moment, a mysterious power was suddenly released from Nietion's body, which turned into streams of runes that circulated around his body. Black Moon Flame's eyes flickered as he saw this. His face was blank, and he could not believe his eyes. At the same time, Qianlongxia stared at Nietion and blurted out in a daze, "The power of heavenly rhythm." The mysterious power that had appeared around Nietion's body was the power of heavenly rhythm. The appearance of the power of heavenly rhythm meant that Nietion had broken through the sacred realm and become a sacred realm. That's right, Nietion had broken through to the sacred realm due to the impact of the bloodline resonance. The Ghost Emperor had mentioned before that Nietion had the potential to become a sacred realm. All he needed was a surge of energy. Right now, the impact of the bloodline resonance had allowed Nietion's realm to become a sacred realm. Following this, the aura of the power of heavenly rhythm around Niet Tion's body grew stronger, and the wounds on his body began to heal rapidly. Black Moon Flame and Qian Longxia's expressions froze for a long time. They couldn't react for a long time. This kid has actually become a sacred realm in a realm. After a long time, Black Moon Flame finally snapped out of his daze. His eyes trembled as he looked at Niet Tian, intense fear appearing in his eyes. There were countless realm systems in the all heavens. However, the number of people who had become a sacred realm in a realm could be counted on one hand since the ancient times. These people had all become legendary figures in the all heavens without exception. Right now, a martialist who had become a sacred realm had appeared in front of him. How could Black Moon Flame not be excited and shocked? Without a doubt, as long as Niet Tian continued to grow, he would become a supreme legend in the all heavens sacred realm. No, I must kill this kid. Black Moon Flame suddenly reacted and let out a low roar. The Black Moon devil flames on his body burned wildly, as if they were going to devour the heavens and earth. Niet Tian was too terrifying. He couldn't let him continue to grow. He must kill Niet Tian today. With these thoughts in mind, Black Moon Flame let out a bellow and moved in the blink of an eye. The flame devil spirit thrust its palm out, and the berserk flame devil behemoth charged towards Niet Tian, causing the void to rumble. Boom! However, at this moment, Niet Tian's figure suddenly stood up. An incomparably mysterious aura surged from his body. It was very magical, and he actually fused with the heavens and earth. It made Niet Tian look like he was one with the heavens and earth. Boom! In the next instant, the boundless power of the heavens and earth in the surrounding space suddenly became violent and surged toward Niet Tian like a landslide. This is resonance of the heavens and earth. Seeing this scene, He Yuyan's eyes suddenly trembled, and he suddenly thought of something. His face instantly froze, and he was extremely shocked. It was rumored that when a cultivator ascended to the sacred realm, they could trigger a resonance of the heavens and earth. At that moment, the cultivator was connected to the heavens and earth. Now, the power of the heavens and earth was gathering toward Niet Tian. Without a doubt, he had triggered a resonance of the heavens and earth and was connected to the heavens and earth. Resonance of the heavens and earth. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor exclaimed in surprise. His expression turned into one of extreme shock as he exclaimed, Niet Tian, what are you doing? Resonance of the heavens and earth was only a phenomenon of the heavens and earth. However, Niet Tian was using the resonance of the heavens and earth to forcefully absorb the power of the heavens and earth. What was he trying to do? I, Niet Tian, am borrowing the power of the heavens and earth to kill you. At this moment, Niet Tian suddenly raised his head and stared at the Black Moon Flame with a pair of incomparably cold eyes. He said in an incomparably deep voice. At this moment, it was as if Niet Tian was the heavens and earth. Chapter 34:45. Borrowing strength from the heavens, borrowing strength from the heavens. Niet Tian stood high up in the sky, and a huge whirlpool formed around him. He stood in the center of the whirlpool, and the power of the heavens and earth surged into his body like a huge wave. Boom! 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 Niet Tian's aura continued to increase, and waves of terrifying power crashed into the void. The space around him rumbled as if the heavens and earth were about to collapse. How is this possible? Qian Liangxia's eyes trembled as he looked at Niet Tian in disbelief. Becoming a Saint Realm expert was already enough to make Niet Tian a legend in the entire Holy Heaven world. However, at this moment, Niet Tian was actually absorbing the power of heaven and earth with the help of the phenomenon of heaven and earth in an attempt to kill the Black Moon Flame. Black Moon Flame was a peak great sage at the 9th level of heavenly righteousness, while Niet Tian had just stepped into the sage realm. It was impossible for a first-level heavenly charm holy disciple to kill a 9th level heavenly righteousness great sage. In the saint realm, even the difference between each small realm was huge. If Niet Tian could really kill Black Moon Flame, He would be too terrifying. Nyetian, you are just a holy disciple who has just stepped into the sage realm. No matter how much power you borrow, you can't fight against me. Black Moon Flame roared furiously in the air. It was like a clap of thunder that resounded in everyone's ears. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, the violent Black Moon Devil Flame burned crazily, as if thousands of devils were dancing, wanting to devour the sky. Even though Nyetian had triggered the resonance of the heavens and earth, and his aura had increased to an unbelievable level, Black Moon Flame didn't believe that Nyetian had the ability to kill him. Even though the power of the heavens and earth could be borrowed, there was a limit. When a martial artist borrowed the power of the heavens and earth, their martial body would also be under great pressure as their strength increased. Black Moon Flame had once seen a cultivator activate a formation scroll and merge the power of the world. However, the power of the world suppressed the cultivator to death. He didn't believe that Nyetian's martial body was strong enough to withstand the power that could kill a saint of the ninth heaven of heavenly justice. Die. Following that, Black Moon Flame roared, and the Black Moon Devil Flame on his body surged out. It actually condensed into a Black Moon giant beast in the air and pressed down on Nyetian. Boom! In an instant, the void suddenly rumbled, as if the entire world was about to collapse. Boom! Right at this moment, a boundless aura arose from Nyetian's body. It was boundless and boundless, vast and boundless. At this moment, Nyetian was like a giant standing in the void. He was the heaven and earth, and the heaven and earth only bowed to him. Boom! In the next instant, the power of the heavens and earth shot up to the clouds. Under the impact of the violent aura, the Black Moon giant beast body actually stopped moving. It suddenly sank in the air and couldn't move another step forward. The Black Moon giant beast actually didn't give in to the power of the heavens and earth and forcefully restrained it. How is this possible? The sudden and shocking scene caused Black Moon Flame's eyes to tremble, and he shouted out in shock. Not even in his dreams did he expect that the power of the heavens and earth released by Nyetian would be so terrifying. Old thing, I borrow power from the heavens. Can you stop me? At that moment, Nyetian jerked his head up. His eyes were as dark as the abyss as he let out a deep roar. Immediately afterwards, the seven despaired demon sword appeared in his hand. The light on the edge of the sword was incomparably dazzling. You? Black Moon Flame's eyes trembled, and his face revealed an unconcealable look of terror. He couldn't imagine that Nyetian could actually explode with such terrifying power under the power of the heavens and earth. Nyetian was truly too terrifying. Die! At this moment, the corner of Nyetian's mouth twitched, and he roared out a cold word. Then, the seven despair demonic sword stabbed out, and a black sword shadow shot up to the sky like a black dragon. Boom! In the next instant, the black sword shadow landed, and the Black Moon giant beast crumbled. Boom! Immediately after, the black sword shadow headed straight for Black Moon Flame. Black Moon Flame felt the aura of death approaching him, causing his face to tremble. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He wanted to say something, but no words came out. He had underestimated Nyetian. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the black sword shadow landed on the spirit of the fire demon. After a loud explosion, the spirit of the fire demon collapsed. Black Moon Flame's eyes trembled, and the fear in his heart was written all over his face. At this moment, he finally realized how terrifying Nyetian was. However, everything was too late. In the next instant, the black sword shadow swept past, and the spirit of the fire demon disappeared completely. Black Moon Flame's body was engulfed, and no bones were left. Myriad Stars Pavilion's Black Moon Evil Lord, a ninth heaven righteousness great sage, died tragically. In the void, the wind howled, and the heavens and earth were filled with killing intent. Everyone's eyes were glazed, and the entire place fell into a dead silence. All eyes were focused on Nyetian, as if they were looking at a demon god that had walked out of hell. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that a martial artist who had just entered the sage state could kill a ninth heaven righteousness martial artist with one strike? Everything was too unbelievable. Qian Longxia looked at Nie Tian from afar, her mouth slightly agape, and her breathing stopped. Black Moon Flame was killed by Nie Tian with one strike. This was a scene that she had never expected and could never have imagined. How could Nie Tian be so powerful after borrowing power from the heavens and earth? How could Nie Tian's martial body withstand such a huge amount of power? At that moment, Nie Tian's body, which was standing in the void, suddenly swayed. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned as white as a sheet. He had indeed withstood too much pressure when absorbing the power of the heavens and earth. Furthermore, even though he had broken through to the sage state, the injuries that his martial body had suffered previously had not fully recovered. If not for the 9 heavenly Tao shackles in his body, which allowed him to have a strong understanding of the power of the heavens and earth and better control it, he would not have been able to withstand such a powerful power of the heavens and earth. But now, the resonance of the heavens and earth had disappeared, and the pressure brought by the power of the heavens and earth still injured him considerably. Fortunately, he had really killed Black Moon Flame. Rushi, at that moment, Nie Tian recalled the 9-extremity chaos beast with a thought. He then turned around abruptly and looked at the starry, forbidden space in the distance. The next moment, his figure moved, and he turned into a stream of light, flying toward the starry, forbidden space. He came to the side of the starry, forbidden space and spread out his divine senses. He saw Mo Rushi inside the starry, forbidden space, as well as a baby wrapped in star runes. That baby was Nie Tian and Mo Rushi's child. Star runes. Nie Tian's eyes widened when he saw the star runes wrapped around the baby's body. He could sense that the star runes were formed by the power of the stars. This child had just been born, so why would there be star runes around his body? Chapter 34:46. Can't choose star rune. Nie Tian looked at the infant wrapped in the star runes, and his eyes trembled with shock. He couldn't help but be stunned for a few seconds. How could this child possess the power of star runes? Don't tell me that star power has become part of my bloodline and has been passed on to my child? Nie Tian calmed down a bit, his eyes glittering with cold light. The star essence stone had already fused with him, but he did not expect that the star essence stone had already become the power of his bloodline. Rushi. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly saw Mo Rushi's body sway. He couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. The next moment, he immediately sensed that Mo Rushi's breathing was still rising and falling, indicating that she was still alive. However, Mo Rushi's aura was weakening bit by bit. The child's aura was growing stronger bit by bit. That child was still absorbing Mo Rushi's power. I must break the star forbidden space now. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he took a step forward. A space-time blade condensed in his hand, and he was ready to tear open the star forbidden space. The star forbidden space had become extremely weak without the protection of the star forbidden boundary. The space-time blade that Nie Tian condensed with the boundary of the universe could easily tear open the forbidden space. Wait. However, at that moment, Qian Longxia's voice suddenly rang out, and he cried out in panic. Nie Tian frowned and suddenly turned around. His eyes were like sharp blades as he stared at Qian Longxia and said coldly, "You want to stop me?" Right now, Nie Tian was already at the 1st level of heaven rhythm, while Qian Longxia was at the 9th level of heaven rhythm, but he was heavily injured. If the two of them were to fight now, Nie Tian could instantly kill Qian Longxia. No. Qian Longxia's beautiful eyes flickered as if she was thinking about something. After hesitating for a while, she said, Nie Tian, the starry forbidden space is actually a mother's sacrifice formation. I know. Nie Tian frowned. He didn't expect Qian Longxia to tell him about this. He replied coldly. You know? Qian Longxia was stunned. He could not help but exclaim in surprise, and his expression could not help but turn ugly. She didn't expect Nie Tian to know that the star-forbidden space was a mother-sacrifice grand formation. No wonder Nie Tian was so crazy and insisted on breaking the star-forbidden space. Qian Langyi, what are you trying to say? Nie Tian was getting impatient and asked coldly. He felt that Qian Longxia wanted to tell him something, but he was still hesitating. Nie Tian, the grandmother sacrificial formation isn't complete yet. If you break the forbidden space now, your child. Qian Longxia's beautiful eyebrows furrowed. After a pause, he said, your child will still die. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he heard Qian Longxia's words. His face instantly darkened. He was silent for a few seconds. His suppressed breathing made it seem like he was going to kill someone at any moment. Moments later, Nie Tian looked at Qian Longxia and asked in a deep voice, is what you said true, Qian Longxia? Yes. Qian Longxia nodded. She did not look good. Earlier, she had been deeply shocked when she saw the reckless look in Nie Tian's eyes. Furthermore, she knew what the child in the star-forbidden space meant. That child must not die. Ghost Emperor. Nie Tian's expression was as dark as death. He was silent for a long time before he spoke. Nie Tian, what she said is true, the Ghost Emperor replied with a troubled expression. He didn't know about this earlier. He had only sensed the mother's sacrificial formation again after Qian Longxia told him about it. The mother's sacrificial formation used the mother as a sacrifice. It used the mother's power to speed up the growth of the child. At the moment, the mother's sacrificial formation was not complete. If the star-forbidden space was opened, the power in the child's body would be unstable under the impact of external forces. It would explode and die. Damn it! Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he growled like a wild beast. He was faced with a dilemma that he couldn't make a choice. Nie Tian, you... Qian Longxia's eyes trembled. Of course, she understood Nie Tian's current situation. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Nie Tian was very calm and clear-headed, but he had no choice. If he broke the star-forbidden space now, his child would die. If he didn't break the star-forbidden space, Mo Rushi would die after the mother's sacrificial formation was completed. On one side was his child, and on the other was his wife. He could only save one. How could he choose? It was a dead end before him. Nie Tian fell silent. He stood in the void as if he was nothing. Even if he had the star origin stone, the god-fiend origin embryo, the heavenly Tao shackles, and the sage realm, what was the use? At this moment, he felt hopeless and helpless. Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost came to Nie Tian's side. They didn't know what was happening, so they could only look at Nie Tian helplessly. Nie Tian, you must make a choice. The Ghost Emperor's voice rang out. It was deep and hollow, even a little illusory. You can only choose one between your wife and your child. Only one. These words were like steel needles that mercilessly pierced Nie Tian's heart, mercilessly tearing it apart. He could only choose one. Did Nie Tian have a choice? Could it be that he had to kill his own child with his own hands, or watch his wife die with his own eyes? Both choices were worse than death. He couldn't make a choice. Ghost Emperor, I want both of them alive. After a long time, Nie Tian spoke. Tears slowly flowed from his eyes as he said in a low voice, if one of us has to die, it can only be me. The Ghost Emperor fell silent after hearing Nie Tian's words. He couldn't answer. Nie Tian wanted to die for Mo Rushi or his child, but he couldn't even do that. Boom! Just as Nie Tian was in a perilous situation, the sky above suddenly trembled violently, and then a huge space-time rift appeared in the void. Qian Longxia's eyes trembled as he looked up at the sky. He saw a martialist in black. This is... Qian Longxia's expression became terrified when he saw the martialist in black. He couldn't even speak. He never expected that this person would come in person. At the same time, Nie Tian turned around to look at the martialist in black. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. The martialist in black was only a black shadow that seemed to be shrouded in darkness. One could vaguely make out the shape of a human, but one couldn't see its face clearly. However, this person's aura was extremely terrifying. As the figure stepped out of the space-time crack, the surrounding void shook, and cracked. Chapter 34:47. The Lord of the Stars Nyation stared at the black-clothed man with a gloomy, cold, and restrained expression. The black-robed man was too powerful. He was definitely not weaker than the Lord of all ghosts and Xiahou Yao, the Lord of the Stars. At this moment, Qian Longxie stared at the black-clothed man. His eyes trembled as he uttered a name in shock. The black-robed man was the Myriad Star Pavilion Master. The Myriad Star Pavilion Master had actually appeared in person. Only at that moment did Qian Longxie realize how important Nyation was. However, the Lord of the Stars' appearance had a huge impact. The most mysterious organization in the all-sky sacred world, the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion, had decreed that Sage Realm Martialists were not allowed to set foot in realms. Previously, although Nyation was very important, the Myriad Star Pavilion had only sent Qian Longxie and a few others. Even after Nyation had posed a threat to the star-restricted space, the Myriad Star Pavilion had only sent He Yueyin, a slightly weaker Star Lord. The Myriad Star Pavilion had been so careful because they did not want to alarm the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. The Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion was too powerful. Even the Myriad Star Pavilion was very wary of it. However, the Lord of the Stars' appearance had a huge impact on the realms. It was very likely that the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion had been alarmed. Nyation, future Star Sacred Leader, we finally meet. The black-robed man spoke at this moment. His voice was cold and deep, filled with an extremely oppressive aura. Boom! Creak, creak, creak. The moment he opened his mouth, a terrifying formless energy was released from the void. Everywhere it passed, the space would shatter. In the blink of an eye, Nyation felt an enormous suppressive force bearing down on him, causing his face to darken. The black-robed man had actually attacked him. Whoosh! In the next moment, Nyation didn't even have time to react before the enormous power enveloped him, rendering him unable to move at all. That force was too terrifying. It was not something he could contend with at all. Pavilion Master. The shocking scene caused Qian Longxie's eyes to flicker as he exclaimed. She hadn't expected the Lord of Myriad Stars to directly attack Nyation. The Lord of the Stars wouldn't kill Nyation right away, would he? Who are you? Nyation raised his head to look at the Lord of the Stars and opened his mouth with great difficulty. However, the power that enveloped his body almost suffocated him, making it impossible for him to speak. I like to see what's so special about you that you've been chosen by this star origin stone. The Lord of Myriad Stars didn't answer Nyation. Instead, he said in a cold and deep voice. From his tone, Nyation could hear a great deal of resentment. This Lord of Myriad Stars seemed to have something to do with star origin stones. As soon as the Lord of the Stars finished speaking, a terrifying mind power surged into Nyation's body. A mental barrier, the Ghost Emperor exclaimed as he realized something. It turned out that the Lord of Myriad Stars wanted to use a mental barrier to pry into Nyation's martial body. Just as the Lord of Myriad Stars had said, he wanted to know why Nyation had been chosen by the star origin stone. Nyation's expression was gloomy. He felt an invisible hand roaming around in his body, making him extremely uncomfortable. The Lord of Myriad Stars wanted to test his trump card and see through him. Get out of my body! At that moment, Nyation let out a bellow and unleashed a terrifying psychic attack from his soul awareness. Like a raging torrent, it shot out with a loud rumble. In the next instant, the Lord of Myriad Stars' mental probe was forcefully blasted out. High up in the sky, the Lord of Myriad Stars' body swayed slightly. He couldn't help but take a few steps back and exclaim in surprise. He had never imagined that Nyation would have the ability to directly break through his mental barrier. Nyation was so young. It was impossible for his mental power to be so strong. Who the hell are you? At this moment, Nyation stared coldly at the Lord of the Stars and let out a low growl like a wild beast. The reason he could break through the Lord of Myriad Stars' mental barrier was because of the Eternal Night Fox's power. Nyation's consciousness was connected to the Eternal Night Fox. In that instant, when the Eternal Night Fox released its mental attack, Nyetian felt a very familiar aura, the aura of the stars. That's right, it was the aura of the stars. Although that aura was fleeting and very weak, Nyetian was too familiar with the power of the stars, so he was very sure that it was the aura of the stars. Why could this black-clothed man release the aura of the stars? Who was this black-clothed man? From Qian Langxie's reaction, the black-clothed man seemed to be the Myriad Stars Pavilion Master. However, Nyetian felt that the black-clothed man's identity was not as simple as the Myriad Stars Pavilion Master. Did you feel the power of the stars? The Lord of Myriad Stars calmed down and laughed coldly. With a hint of disdain, he said in a deep voice, "I've never used the power of the stars for so many years. I didn't expect you to sense it. Who are you?" Nyetian's expression was dark and murderous as he asked cold. The black-clothed man had personally admitted that he had the power of the stars in his body. This made Nyetian even more confused. What kind of person could possess the power of the stars? Nyetian, you won't be able to guess my identity. Don't waste your time. The Lord of Myriad Stars seemed to read Nyetian's mind. He laughed cold and said, "Don't you want to save your wife and child? I can help you." When Nyetian heard the Lord of Myriad Stars' words, his eyes involuntarily shrunk. He said in a deep voice, "State your terms." Of course, he knew that the Lord of Myriad Stars would not help him for free. He must have a motive. "The star origin stones," the Lord of Myriad Stars said cold. His tone contained an unconcealable desire. He had personally come to the territory for the star origin stones. The star origin stones. Nyetian's eyes darkened and his expression stiffened. The Lord of Myriad Stars had really come for the star origin stones. "Nyetian, as long as you hand over the star origin stones, I promise you that your wife and child will live on unscathed," the Lord of Myriad Stars said in a deep voice. On his blurry face, a pair of eyes surged with unconcealable passion. "Why should I believe you?" Nyetian frowned and asked in a deep voice. "So what if you don't believe me? Do you have a choice?" The Lord of Myriad Stars laughed coldly. "Nyetian, you can't afford to gamble this time. The two people in the star-forbidden zone are your loved ones. Are you willing to gamble with their lives for the star origin stones?" Nyetian's expression darkened, and he lowered his head in silence. The Lord of Myriad Stars had said a lot. This time, Nyetian really could not afford to gamble. So what if he did not believe the Lord of Myriad Stars? He had no choice but to hand over the star origin stones. Regardless of whether the Lord of Myriad Stars would save them or not, Nyetian could only believe that he would. Chapter 34:48. Chapter 34:43. Chapter 34:43, Scarlet Life, Loyal Heart. Very good. Hearing that Nyetian had agreed, the Lord of Stars' eyes sparkled with excitement. He laughed and said, "Nyetian, you are indeed a smart person." Nyetian looked down at the Lord of the Stars and didn't say anything. Then, without hesitation, he sat down cross-legged and focused all his attention on the star origin stone. The stellar origin stone had already fused with him, becoming his 10th origin meridian. It would not be easy to forcefully remove it. "Nyetian, do you really want to hand over the astral origin stones?" Just as he sat down, the voice of the Ghost Emperor rang out. "Ghost Emperor, do I have a choice?" Nyetian smiled bitterly with a helpless expression. He had no choice but to do so. No matter how precious the star origin stones were, they were merely worldly possessions. However, Imo Rushi and his child were his dearest loved ones, and he could never give them up. The Ghost Emperor did not reply. Next, Nyetian focused all his attention on extracting the astral origin stones. However, the star origin stone had already fused with his martial body a long time ago. Therefore, when he tried to forcefully remove it, he encountered a powerful resistance. After a while, bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on Nyetian's forehead. On the other hand, the star origin stone showed no signs of breaking away. This brat is a sentimental person. Using his wife and child as a threat, he would definitely hand over the astral origin stones. The Lord of Myriad Stars looked at Nyetian from afar and said in a deep voice, "However, The star origin stone is almost perfectly integrated with his body. It won't be easy to remove it. The Lord of Myriad Stars hadn't expected the star essence stone to fuse so closely with Nyetion. Little brat, with your strength alone, you won't be able to extract the astral origin stones. Let this pavilion master help you. In the next moment, the Lord of the Stars' eyes trembled and he sneered. His silhouette moved, slamming down with his palm. A wave of natural astral energy descended, enveloping Nyetion. Power of the Stars. Nyetion sensed a terrifying aura appearing in the air. It was actually the power of the stars, causing his expression to change. The Lord of the Myriad Stars actually used the power of the stars to attack Nyetion and speed up the extraction of the star origin stones. Nyetion, Tang 13, and Desolate Ghost couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment as they saw the force descending towards Nyetion. That power was simply too terrifying. If it were to fall directly, it was very likely to injure Nyetion. Boom! At this moment, a rumbling sound rang out in the sky. After that, a crack appeared in the space, and a deep voice rang out, "Stop!" Swoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, a sword shadow fell from the sky. It was so fast that it seemed to break through the void. Boom! In the next moment, the two forces collided with a bang. The star energy was actually forcefully stopped by the sword shadow. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, an endless amount of violent energy surged out. It was as if the heavens and earth were about to be torn apart. Nyetion was hit by the violent force, and his figure was forced back a few hundred meters. Huh! He stopped abruptly and exclaimed in shock as he looked up into the sky. High up in the sky, an elder in black appeared. He stood tall in the void like a giant sword that could split the sky, violent and fierce. What a powerful sword intent! Nyetion's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he sensed the sword intent fluctuations in the air. The sword while surrounding the elder in black was too terrifying. It had reached a level that Nyetion could not comprehend. Previously, when Nyetion was in the Sky Sword martial arts competition, he had encountered a few true sword Dao powerhouses, such as Zhong Mingyu, Absolute Eagle King, and others. However, the sword will of those people could not be compared to the sword will of the Elder in the sky. If the sword will of Zhong Mingyu, Absolute Eagle King, was a drop of water, then the sword will of the Elder in black was a vast ocean. Nyetion could not imagine that someone in this world could have such a terrifying sword will. What a terrifying person. At the same time, Qian Longxie looked at the sword will of the Elder in black and exclaimed in shock. He could feel that the aura around the sword will of the stars was no weaker than that of the Lord of the Stars. It was obvious that this was another peak powerhouse of the all-heavens sacred realm. It was too rare for a small realm to have two peak powerhouses of the all-heavens sacred realm at the same time. Could he be from the heavenly Tao, sacred pavilion? In the next instant, Qian Longxie reacted. His first thought was that this black-robed old man was from the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion and was here to question the Lord of Myriad Stars. The heavenly Tao sacred pavilion had a rule that sage realm martial artists were not allowed to enter the realm. However, someone from the Myriad Star Pavilion had come to the realm openly. Even a Myriad Star Pavilion master had come in person. Such behavior was equivalent to openly looking down on the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. The rules of the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion were as firm as iron. No one was allowed to trample them. Oh no! Qian Longxie suddenly felt that the sword will of the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion was definitely from the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. Her pretty face turned ugly. If the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion had come, the Myriad Star Pavilion would be in big trouble. The Lord of the Stars looked at the sword will of the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. His expression changed slightly, and he could not help but exclaim in surprise. He instantly recognized the sword will of the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect this person to appear at this time. Tiansha, long time no see. The sword will of the heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion spoke in a deep voice high up in the sky. His deep and powerful voice was like thunder roaring in the void, as though the entire world was bowing down before him. "It's really you." The Lord of the Stars frowned and exclaimed in shock. Although he had guessed the sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion's identity, he could not help but be surprised when he confirmed it. Nietian frowned, and his expression darkened when he saw that the Lord of the Stars and the sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion knew each other. The sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion had directly called out the Lord of the Stars' name. The sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion seemed to be somewhat fearful of the sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. Who exactly was this sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion? Even the Lord of the Stars was afraid of him. Tian Sha, the star essence stone does not belong to you. You will never get it. The sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion said coldly. I must get the star essence stone. The sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion sneered. In a fit of rage, a dark aura appeared around his body. The sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion frowned slightly. Then, his gaze landed on Nietian. His eyes were burning with passion and even a tinge of reverence as he said, "Nietian, you don't have to hand over the star essence stone. As long as I am here, you and the people around you will not die." His voice was calm, but it was extremely domineering. The sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion did not seem to care about the sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. "You are." Nietian's eyes trembled as he sensed a very familiar aura from the sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. His face stiffened and he was speechless. The 8th star emissary, Red Life Loyal Heart, greets the star sacred leader. At that moment, the sword will of the heavenly Tao sacred leader stepped forward and knelt on one knee in front of Nietian. Chapter 3449. Divine Heaven Ancestor, Divine Heaven Forefather. When Nietian said this name, his pupils involuntarily shrank. He himself was shocked. At this moment, he was very sure that the black-robed elder in front of him was Divine Heaven Ancestor. Just now, he felt that the sword essence was very familiar. Now, he carefully sensed Divine Heaven Ancestor's aura and confirmed the latter's identity. He never thought that Divine Heaven Ancestor would appear at this moment. Divine Heaven Ancestor's actions made Nietian even more unable to remain calm. Divine Heaven Ancestor, with his identity, actually knelt down to Nietian in front of the Lord of Stars and the others. It was true that Divine Heaven Ancestor was the Star Sky Emissary, but the relationship between the Star Sky Sacred Lord and the Star Sky Emissary was not absolute. They were not master and servant, so Divine Heaven Ancestor's sudden kneeling shocked Nietian. One had to know that when Hua Yiru and the others saw Nietian, they didn't kneel. After staring blankly for a few seconds, Nietian finally came to his senses and hastily said, "Patriarch, please get up." Divine Heaven Ancestor slowly stood up and looked at Nietian with a dignified expression. "Star's Sacred Lord, this subordinate is called Scarlet Life, Sacred Heart. Sacred Lord can call me Scarlet Life." He looked as steady as a mountain. Just by standing there, it was as if the entire space had become a little heavier. "Senior Scarlet Life, you." Nietian looked at Divine Heaven Ancestor with a frown. His expression slightly darkened, and he didn't know what to say. "Sacred Lord, watch from the side. Leave the rest to me." Divine Heaven Ancestor said in a deep voice. His entire being was not angry and was very domineering. "Scarlet Life, you are still as arrogant and domineering as before." Tian Sha looked at Divine Heaven Ancestor and smiled cold. "This kid named Nietian is not Dong Wang Zhengron. Why are you going against me for him? Nietian is indeed not Big Brother Dong Wang, but he is the Star Sky Sacred Lord chosen by the Star Essence Stone." Divine Heaven Ancestor solemnly said. "Starry Sky, Holy Lord?" Tian Sha sneered as his face slowly became clearer. This was an extremely thin face that seemed to have experienced countless vicissitudes of life. His eyes were like cold blades that locked onto the sacred heaven ancestor from afar. Qi Ming, when Dong Wang Jingrong was still alive, didn't you swear to protect him for the rest of your life? How come now that Dong Wang Jingrong is dead, an old servant like you has a new master? Tian Sha, I don't need you to judge how I behave. The cold and mocking voice didn't anger the sacred heaven ancestor. He smiled and said, I, Qi Ming, am protecting the star sacred world. Since the star origin stone has chosen Yetian as its sacred master, then my life is his. Even if you call me a slave, I don't care, because a servant is still better than a traitor. Traitor? Hearing these two words, Tian Sha's eyes suddenly became cold and his face became murderous. A terrifying aura was released from his body as he suddenly roared. Crimson life, loyal heart. When Dong Wang Jingrong was alive, he never said that I was a traitor. You, a mere star sky messenger. What right do you have to call me a traitor? The word traitor seemed to have touched Tian Sha's sore spot, causing him to be instantly enraged. Boom! In the next second, a mighty aura was released, causing the heaven and earth to tremble and the clouds to change color. Tian Sha, whether you are a traitor or not, you know best. The sacred heaven ancestor was not afraid at all. He sneered and stepped forward. His entire body released a sky-piercing sword aura that surged like the sea. Boom! Following that, the two terrifying auras collided with each other, causing the void to tremble and endless waves to spread out. The space within a radius of tens of thousands of meters was directly shattered. Even the space-time storm was engulfed in it. Seeing this, the crowd's expressions changed, and they immediately retreated. The Lord of the Stars and the sacred heaven ancestor were too terrifying. Even if it was just a clash of auras, the domain space-time couldn't withstand it. Crack, crack, crack. At this time, Nyetian saw that the space within the void was continuously collapsing as if the entire world was about to be destroyed. This was the fragility of the domain space-time. Once the space-time collapsed on a large scale, it would trigger a terrifying chain reaction that would destroy the entire domain. After all, the Lord of the Stars and the sacred heaven ancestor were both releasing powerful sacred power that the domain's space-time couldn't withstand. Boom! Boom! At this time, the Lord of the Stars and the sacred heaven ancestor both retreated, then raised their hands in the air and released a mysterious sacred power that instantly repaired the collapsed space-time. In an instant, the two sacred powers directly repaired the space-time, like the spring wind and rain. The Lord of the Stars and the sacred heaven ancestor obviously didn't want to see the vanishing shadow domain collapse. They both knew that it wasn't easy to maintain the stability of a domain system. The collapse of one domain could cause the collapse of nearby domains. Once this chain reaction was triggered, the entire domain system could be destroyed. If a domain system was destroyed, neither the Lord of the Stars nor the sacred heaven ancestor would be able to bear the responsibility. These two are so scary. Nyetian looked at the Lord of the Stars and the sacred heaven ancestor with a shocked expression. Judging from their auras, these two were even stronger than the Lord of the Stars and the Earth Destruction Star Monarch, Xiahou Yao. What shocked Nyetian even more was the conversation between the two. The sacred heaven ancestor's identity had been confirmed. He was the 8-star sky emissary named Scarlet Life Loyal Heart. However, the identity of the Lord of the Stars named Tian Sha was still unknown. What Nyetian could confirm was that Tian Sha was related to the star origin stone and knew the previous star sky sacred lord, Dong Wang Jingrong. From the sacred heaven ancestor's words, it seemed that Tian Sha had betrayed the star sky sacred lord. However, Tian Sha wasn't willing to accept the name of a traitor. Is Tian Sha a star lord or a star sky emissary? Nyetian frowned and secretly guessed. He felt that Tian Sha was most likely a star lord. The 9-star sky emissaries seemed to have obvious differences in strength. Among the star sky emissaries that Nyetian had seen, the first star sky emissary was the weakest, while the 8-star sky emissary was the strongest. Perhaps this had something to do with the rank of the world they existed in. After all, the first star sky emissary and the others were in a domain, while the eighth star sky emissary was in the sacred world. However, Tian felt that there was no origin spirit suitable for Tian Sha in the 9 galaxies, so the latter's identity was most likely a Star-Lord. Judging from the clash of auras just now, Tian Sha was stronger than the Earth Destruction Star Monarch, Xiahou Yao. Chapter 3450. A Lone Star, a star soul even stronger than the killing, vanquishing wolf. Tian's eyes narrowed, and his expression slightly changed. To his knowledge, there were only 2 star souls comparable to the killing, vanquishing wolf. One was the dual absolute star soul, and the other was the lone sky star soul. Imperial descent of the purple myrtle. Was Tian Sha the other dual absolute star lord, or the legendary lone sky star lord? Tian was more inclined to believe that Tian Sha was the other dual absolute star lord, because lone sky star lord should be very powerful. The 8-star messenger was not strong enough to fight against him. Tian Sha, if you and I fight here, I'm afraid this territory will be completely destroyed. At this time, the voice of the divine heaven ancestor came from the sky. If you want to fight, we can fight after we return to the sacred realm. Qi Ming, you came here because you felt the fluctuations of the stars, right? Tian Sha's expression darkened. He calmed down a lot and asked coldly, Tian Sha, I came for the star sky, sacred lord. With me here, don't even think about touching a hair on him. The divine heaven ancestor spoke in a low voice. His majestic eyes locked onto Tian Sha. Humph, Tian Sha sneered after hearing the divine heaven ancestor's words. Qi Ming, aren't you looking down on me a bit too much? Do you still want to fight? The divine heaven ancestor shouted and released his aura like a tsunami. Qi Ming, even if I don't kill Tian right now, do you think he will leave with you? Tian Sha smiled coldly. His gloomy eyes scanned the star-forbidden space and said, his wife and child are still inside the star-forbidden space. Aside from me, no one can save them. Do you think that the star sky sacred lord that you believe in will watch his wife and child die in front of him? With that said, Tian Sha's gaze turned and locked on Tian with an incomparably sinister and vicious look. Tian clenched his fists tightly. His eyes seemed to be spewing fire. He was not worried about himself, but Mo Rushi and the child. All he wanted now was the safety of Mo Rushi and his child. As long as Mo Rushi and his child were safe, he wouldn't care even if he had a hand over the star origin stones. Tian Sha, do you really think that you're the only one capable of controlling the starry forbidden space? Old ancestor Sheng Tian sneered and moved like a ghost. His figure flickered in the air and appeared next to Tian. Senior Crimson Life. Seeing Forefather Divine Heaven, Tian bowed slightly to show his respect. At this moment, the Divine Heaven Ancestor's Crimson Life, Dan Hart, was only 100 meters away from him. He could clearly feel the aura of the latter and was extremely shocked. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor was purposely restraining his aura, but the ocean-like aura on his body was still very frightening. In front of the Sacred Heaven Ancestor, Tian felt that he was a drop of water, while the Ancestor was an endless ocean. An expert with such strength could easily kill Tian with just a flick of his finger. Saint Lord, step back. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor looked at Tian and slightly nodded his head. With these words, Tian blurred into action and retreated to 1,000 meters away. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor stared at the starry forbidden space with a serious expression, seemingly a bit nervous. He took a deep breath and reached out his hand. A star rune appeared in his palm. This is... Up in the sky, Tian Sha saw the star rune and immediately felt a very familiar aura, causing his body to shrink and his face to stiffen. Such a powerful star rune. Tian looked at the star rune and felt the extremely vast aura of the stars. His expression changed and his heart was shocked. Whoosh! At this time, the Sacred Heaven Ancestor slightly pushed his palm and the star rune directly entered the starry forbidden space. Immediately, the aura of the starry forbidden space was forcefully changed. Tian felt the aura in the void, and his expression changed. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's shocked voice sounded. That star rune is so powerful. It actually forcefully changed the grandmother sacrificial formation. So that star rune was used to change the grandmother sacrificial formation. Rushi and the little one's aura are changing. Nietion's divine sense moved and sensed Mo Rushi and the child inside the starry forbidden space. His eyes couldn't help but tremble with joy. After the star rune entered and the grandmother sacrificial formation was changed, Nietion felt the aura of Mo Rushi and the child becoming stronger at the same time. It seemed that after the grandmother sacrificial formation was changed, Mo Rushi's power was no longer being devoured. Instead, it began to absorb the power inside the starry forbidden space. That star rune was too powerful. It could actually directly change the grandmother sacrificial formation. This is impossible. Impossible. At this time, the Tian Sha in the sky finally reacted after being stunned for a long time and roared like a beast. Absolutely impossible. That person can't still be alive. He repeated these words over and over, as if he had gone mad. That person? Nietion looked at the Tian Sha and could not help but be stunned. Then, he thought of something and his expression changed instantly. At this moment, he thought of a person, the previous star saint, Dongwang Zhengrong. When Nietion sensed a star rune just now, apart from being powerful, he also felt a familiar aura. That aura was clearly the same as Dongwang Zhengrong's natal star rune. Back in the Tianxing mountain range, the all-ghost ancestor had given Nietion something. Dongwang Zhengrong's natal star rune. It was this natal star rune that changed the aura of the star power inside Nietion's body. And now, the aura that Nietion sensed from the star rune was no different from Dongwang Zhengrong's natal star rune. Could it be that Dongwang Zhengrong was still alive? Nietion's eyes suddenly froze. He finally understood why the Tian Sha suddenly lost control. The Tian Sha must have also sensed the same aura from the star rune, so he thought that Dongwang Zhengrong was still alive. Saint Lord, the people inside the star forbidden space are fine now. At this time, the divine heaven ancestor did not care about the Tian Sha, but looked at Nietion and said. Nietion reacted and used his divine sense to sense the star forbidden space. After confirming that the two people inside were fine, he finally relaxed. Then, Nietion did not hesitate and directly put the entire star forbidden space into the 9 extreme. Senior Scarlet Fate. The star rune just now seemed to be from Lord Dongwang Zhengrong. Could it be that he is still alive? Nietion looked at the divine heaven ancestor and couldn't help but ask. Big brother Dongwang has fallen long ago. The divine heaven ancestor's face was gloomy, and he did not hide anything. He said, "He left that star rune for me a long time ago. So that's how it is." Nietion slightly nodded, but his heart couldn't help but sink. He could see that the divine heaven ancestor seemed to have something that he did not say. Senior Scarlet Fate, who is he? Then, Nietion suddenly looked up at the Tian Sha in the sky and asked in a deep voice. Chapter 34:51. Heavenly Tao Sovereign Dual Absolute Star Souls, Heavenly Cursed Lone Star. Nietion heard divine heaven ancestor's words, and his eyes suddenly narrowed with shock. His guess was correct. This Star Lord named Tian Sha was one of the dual absolute Star Lords. No wonder Tian Sha had the aura of the stars on his body. No wonder divine heaven ancestor said Tian Sha was a traitor. No wonder Tian Sha was so desperate for the Star Essence Stone. So his identity was one of the dual absolute Star Lords. After confirming Tian Sha's identity, Nietion had a deeper understanding of the Myriad Star Pavilion. No wonder this organization was called the Myriad Star Pavilion and had Star Lords, Star Priests, and Star Envoys. So the master of the Myriad Star Pavilion was a Star Lord himself. From Tian Sha's establishment of the Myriad Star Pavilion, it could be seen that he did not only want to be a Star Lord, but also the Star Holy Lord. Thus, he desperately searched for the Star Essence Stone. Unfortunately, the Star Essence Stone had already found its own master, Nietion. Perhaps this was why Tian Sha hated Nye Tian so much. The moment he saw Nye Tian, he was eager to check Nye Tian's body to find out how Nye Tian was able to become the Star Holy Lord. After knowing Tian Sha's identity, everything seemed to be much clearer. At this time, Divine Heaven Ancestor looked at Tian Sha and loudly said, "Tian Sha, big brother Dong Huang has fallen. You don't need to be crazy anymore." Tian Sha suddenly froze, and his expression darkened. He asked cold, "Why do you have a star rune he condensed in your hand?" "Big brother Dong Huang left that rune for me a long time ago." Divine Heaven Ancestor replied cold. He clearly didn't want to waste any more time with Tian Sha and said, "Tian Sha, you don't have anything to threaten the Holy Lord anymore. You should leave." "Leave?" Tian Sha froze for a moment, and his expression became very ugly. He had schemed for everything, but didn't get anything. How could he be willing to leave when Divine Heaven Ancestor asked him to? However, the star-forbidden space was under the control of the Sacred Heaven Ancestor, so there was nothing that could threaten Nye Tian. If he chose to attack Nye Tian now, then he would have to fight against the Sacred Heaven Ancestor first. He had known the Sacred Heaven Ancestor for a long time and knew that the latter's strength was unfathomable. If the two of them were to fight with everything they had, the realm before them would definitely not be able to withstand it. If that happened, things would get out of hand. But he was unwilling to stop now. Tian Sha's face darkened as he pondered for a long time. Suddenly, he turned around and locked his cold eyes on a Tang 13. Tang 13 felt her heart skip a beat and couldn't help but gasp. When Nye Tian saw this scene, his expression also changed, and his heart suddenly sank. Boom! But at this moment, a rumbling sound rang out in the void, followed by the appearance of a crack in time and space. Everyone was taken aback as they raised their heads to look at the sky. From the crack in time and space, a white-robed figure appeared. His body shone with sacred light as he stepped on the void. With every step, a seven-colored sacred lotus appeared in the void. "That's someone from the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion." Tian Sha's expression changed when he saw the white-robed figure. Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. At the same time, the Sacred Heaven Ancestor's eyes trembled and his expression darkened. The people from the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion still appeared. Who is so daring to enter the realm without the permission of the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion? At this moment, the white-robed figure shouted. His mighty voice reverberated in the space and turned into thousands of sacred lights that shrouded the area below. In an instant, the sacred light enveloped the entire vanishing Shadow City. What a powerful force! Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed, and his heart was filled with shock. At this moment, he felt that the void was wrapped by a powerful force that made it difficult for him to breathe. At the same time, the surrounding space became very stable under the stabilization of this force. It was obvious that the white-robed figure was reinforcing the surrounding space. At this moment, Nye Tian also saw clearly that the white-robed figure was a graceful and peerless woman. She was dressed in white and danced gracefully like a goddess descending to the mortal world. The woman's facial features were extremely exquisite, as if they were the work of the Creator. Every inch of her skin was exquisite to the extreme, and it was impossible to tell her age. At first glance, she seemed to be a girl around 18 or 19 years old. However, her eyes were as deep as the abyss and as sharp as a blade. It was as if she had been through the baptism of countless years. While she had experienced the vicissitudes of life, there was a sense of clarity. In the next instant, the white-robed woman appeared in front of everyone. Her body emitted a blinding sacred light, and no one dared to look at her directly. Only Tian Sha, the Sacred Heaven Ancestor, and Nye Tian could see the appearance of the white-robed woman clearly. Myriad Star Pavilion Master, Tian Sha, greets the Heavenly Tao Sovereign. At this moment, Tian Sha took a step forward and slightly bowed towards the white-robed woman. He was extremely respectful, and there was no trace of insolence left. Martial Sky Association Master, Scarlet Life Loyal Heart, greets the heavenly Tao sovereign. At the same time, the sacred heaven ancestor also took a step forward and slightly bowed. Tian Sha and Scarlet Life Loyal Heart were the leaders of the Myriad Star Pavilion and the Heaven Martial Association, respectively. However, in front of the venerable of the Heaven Tao Sacred Pavilion, they had to be respectful and didn't dare to show any signs of arrogance. From this, one could see how high the status of the Heavenly Tao Sovereign was in the all-heaven sacred realm. So it's the two of you. The Heavenly Tao Sovereign's beautiful eyes slightly darkened. She glanced at Tian Sha and the sacred heaven ancestor and said, "You two are Sky Martial Saint ancestors. Do you know how big of an impact you will have on the entire territory system by entering the territory?" Yes. The Heavenly Tao Sovereign and the sacred heaven ancestor lowered their heads in response. They didn't even dare to look up at the Heavenly Tao Sovereign. "How dare you? You know that the Heavenly Tao Sovereign doesn't allow Sage Realm cultivators to enter the territory, yet you still broke the rules. Are you looking down on the Heavenly Tao Sovereign?" The Heavenly Tao Sovereign's beautiful eyes darkened as she shouted. Then, two rays of sacred light appeared like two giant hands and directly pressed towards Tian Sha and the sacred heaven ancestor. Boom! Boom! In an instant, the figures of Tian Sha and the sacred heaven ancestor suddenly sank. Their backs bent even more, and they were almost kneeling. Seeing this scene, Nye Tian's expression couldn't help but change. He was shocked. Tian Sha and the sacred heaven ancestor were both Sky Martial Saint ancestors. Their cultivation was already at the peak of the Sage Realm. Their strength was definitely not weaker than the Heavenly Tao Sovereign. However, in front of the Heavenly Tao Sovereign, the two of them didn't dare to resist at all. Even when the Heavenly Tao Sovereign lowered their heads, they didn't dare to speak. The Heavenly Tao Sovereign's action was equivalent to directly slapping their faces. However, even so, they didn't resist and just silently endured it. It seemed that the martial artists of the holy world were very afraid of the Heavenly Tao Sovereign. Chapter 3452. Chapter 3447. Heavenly Law, Sacred Order cripple their own cultivation. For simple words came out of the Heavenly Law Sovereign's mouth. His voice was calm, but it was like thunder in everyone's ears. The Heavenly Law Sovereign wanted Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor to cripple their own cultivation. Crippling their own cultivation, of course, meant crippling their own cultivation. If that was the case, then Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor were no different from cripples. Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor were both Sky Martial Sacred Ancestors, and they were the leaders of two great forces. Yet, these two were asked to cripple their own cultivation just because they entered the territory. The Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion was indeed tyrannical. No wonder the martial artists of the sacred world were so afraid of the Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion. Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor didn't raise their heads or say anything after the Sky Tao Sovereign finished his words. It was obvious that they didn't dare to respond or resist. Is the Heavenly Law Sacred Pavilion really this powerful? Nye Tian looked at the Heavenly Law Sovereign, his eyes slightly trembling. Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor. One was a star monarch while the other was a star emissary. Moreover, they were both peak star monarchs and star emissaries. If these two really crippled their own cultivation, Nye Tian would feel very uncomfortable. The atmosphere was so oppressive that no one dared to breathe. What? You two don't agree with my decision? At this time, the Heavenly Law Sovereign spoke again and said you two should be very lucky that I only punished you two and didn't implicate your sections. This is already merciful. Merciful? Nye Tian frowned and sneered in his heart. Making two Sky Martial Sacred Ancestors cripple their own cultivation was considered merciful. One had to know that a martial artist from the initial Yuan Meridian realm, awakening their Yuan Meridians one by one, to the Sky Martial Sacred Ancestor realm, reaching the peak of the martial path, had to put in a lot of effort and sweat. But now, they had to cripple their own cultivation. How could they accept this? In fact, the heavenly lost sovereign was right. Her punishment to Tian Sha and divine heaven ancestor was already merciful. If it was any other venerable, they might have directly destroyed the Myriad Star Pavilion and the Heavenly Martial Association. The Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion had done such things before. Previously, there were cultivators who entered the sacred world and were killed by the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. Even their sects were annihilated. It was extremely dangerous for a sage realm expert to enter a realm verse. A single mistake could lead to the collapse of a realm verse system, and that was a matter of countless lives. From this point of view, the Heavenly Tao Supremacy's punishment was indeed not severe. Tian Sha and Sacred Heaven Ancestor still didn't respond. They only lowered their heads and didn't speak. But at this moment, there was a faint aura surging from Tian Sha's body. It was as though he was furious and was about to explode at any moment. Tian Sha, don't be impulsive. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor transmitted a message to Tian Sha, telling him to calm down. At this moment, if they weren't careful, it wouldn't only be Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor who would die, but also the Myriad Star Pavilion and Heaven Martial Association behind them. Did the two of you not hear this Supremacy's words? At this moment, the Heavenly Tao Supremacy spoke again. This Supremacy's patience is limited. I'll give you one last chance. If you don't cripple your own cultivation, then wait for the Myriad Star Pavilion and Heaven Martial Association to be annihilated. His deep voice was filled with killing intent. At this moment, the Heavenly Tao Supremacy was like an iceberg, emitting a boundless, chilling aura. Sir Supremacy, we did violate the rules, but we didn't cause the destruction of the Realmverse. Don't push us too far. The moment the Heavenly Tao Supremacy finished speaking, Tian Sha suddenly raised his head. His eyes emitted a chilling glow as he growled. Oh no! The Sacred Heaven Ancestor's eyes trembled. His expression changed as he exclaimed in his heart. If Tian Sha suppressed his anger, there would still be room for negotiation. But now it was completely troublesome. Push us too far. The Heavenly Tao Supremacy looked at Tian Sha and sneered. Myriad Star Lord, do you want to fight with this Supremacy? So what if I do? Do you think this Pavilion Master is afraid of you? Tian Sha growled and took a step forward. His entire body emitted a terrifying aura that caused the void to tremble. Luckily, the Heavenly Tao Supremacy had reinforced this space. Otherwise, Tian Sha's aura could instantly tear the space within a few thousand meters apart. Tian Sha and the Sacred Heaven Ancestor were not weaker than the Heavenly Tao Supremacy. What they were afraid of was the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. But if they really fought, Tian Sha alone was enough to fight against the Heavenly Tao Supremacy. Myriad Star Lord, you are challenging the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. The Heavenly Tao Supremacy's beautiful eyes trembled. Her delicate face became extremely cold. I, Tian Sha, will challenge the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion today. What will you do about it? Tian Sha growled fearlessly. You. The Heavenly Tao Supremacy's expression darkened. He was speechless for a moment. Tian Sha stepped down first. At this moment, the Sacred Heaven Ancestor suddenly raised his head and stepped forward, gesturing for Tian Sha to step down. If Tian Sha and the Heavenly Tao Supremacy fought now, no matter the result, Tian Sha and the Myriad Star Pavilion would no longer exist in the All-Heaven Sacred World. No one had ever been able to stay in the All-Heaven Sacred World after offending the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. If you offend the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion, there would be no place for you in the All-Heaven Sacred World. This was the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. This was absolute dominance. What are you trying to say? The Heavenly Tao Supremacy's expression darkened as he looked at the Sacred Heaven Ancestor. Supremacy. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor frowned and hesitated for a long time before finally taking out a white jade token. He showed it to the Heavenly Tao Supremacy and said, I wonder if this token can protect the two of us. The Heavenly Tao Supremacy's eyes trembled when he saw the token. He immediately exclaimed, why do you have a heavenly Tao sacred token? Heavenly Tao sacred token. The heavenly Tao supremacy didn't expect the sacred heaven ancestor to take out a heavenly Tao sacred token at this moment. The heavenly Tao sacred token was the supreme token of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. There were only 4 heavenly Tao sacred tokens in the entire heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. Who was the sacred heaven ancestor? How could he have a heavenly Tao sacred token? Supremacy, 1 heavenly Tao sacred token should be enough to protect the 2 of us, right? The sacred heaven ancestor didn't answer the heavenly Tao supremacy. Instead, he directly threw the heavenly Tao sacred token over. The heavenly Tao supremacy caught the heavenly Tao sacred token with a dazed expression. After a long time, he finally reacted and said, "Since you took out the heavenly Tao sacred token, this supremacy will forgive you this time. But remember, there will be no next time." At this moment, the icy cold voice was no longer so overbearing. 1 heavenly Tao sacred token saved Tian Sha and the sacred heaven ancestor. Phew! After hearing the heavenly Tao supremacy's words, Tian couldn't help but let out a long sigh. His tense expression eased a lot. Tian Sha also retracted his aura and calmed down. What a good, there will be no next time. The heavenly Tao sacred pavilion's way of doing things is really fair and just. However, at this moment, a deep voice suddenly resounded in the sky. It was extremely hoarse and seemed to be mocking the heavenly Tao supremacy. Who is it? The heavenly Tao supremacy's pupils shrunk. He roared and suddenly turned around to look at the sky. Chapter 3453. Heaven Hunter. The heavenly Tao supremacy looked at the purple-robed man. Her delicate face suddenly turned gloomy. She didn't know when the purple-robed man appeared there. Who is this guy? When did he arrive? Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor were also shocked when they saw the purple-robed man. The 2 of them didn't notice the purple-robed man's presence either. The purple-robed man could perfectly hide in front of the 3 sky martial saint ancestors. This meant that he must be very powerful. Tian was also shocked when he saw the purple-robed man. He also didn't sense the purple-robed man's presence. Although his divine sense was connected to the eternal night demon foxes, his perception was far from Tian Sha's. Even Tian Sha and the others couldn't sense the purple-robed man's presence. Of course, he couldn't sense the purple-robed man. What surprised him the most was that the purple-robed man's aura was extremely strange. It was like an abyss, and when his divine sense tried to probe it, he felt like he was sinking deeper and deeper, as if his divine sense was about to be devoured. Who are you? How dare you question me? The heavenly Tao supremacy looked at the purple-robed man and said coldly. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. This purple-robed man had been hiding for so long. Once he appeared, he spoke rudely. This made her very angry. I said that the Heaven Tao Sacred Pavilion is fair and just. Is that questioning? The purple-robed man wasn't nervous at all. Instead, he smiled mockingly. His posture was extremely provocative. Everyone could tell that his words were filled with mockery. I'll ask you again. Who are you? The Heavenly Tao Supremacy's eyes narrowed. A coldly light flashed across her eyes. At the same time, she took a step forward. Sacred light was released from her body. Her aura was so strong that even the heavens and earth were shaking. She was the Heavenly Tao Supremacy. No matter who she faced, she was always high and mighty. She enjoyed the respect of others. However, this purple-robed man was mocking her and didn't respect her at all. How could she tolerate this? Venerable Sir, are you going to make a move? The purple-robed man sensed the Heavenly Way Supremacy's aura, but he was not afraid at all. Instead, he sneered and said, "Forgive me for being blunt, but your strength is nothing to me. You're courting death." Boom! The Heaven Tao Sovereign was completely enraged. With a roar, his aura erupted like a tidal wave, causing the surrounding space to shake violently as if it was about to collapse. Boom! In the next moment, a violent aura rushed towards the purple-robed man. Humph! The The purple-clothed man's demonic eyes flickered, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. Then, he took a step forward, and a terrifying aura appeared like a giant invisible hand, forcibly breaking apart the heavenly Tao sovereign's aura. Bang! Then, there's a muffled sound in the air. The Tian Dao Zun was knocked back dozens of meters before he managed to stabilize himself. He looked extremely flustered. Nye Tian was shocked. He clearly saw a trace of blood appear on the corner of the Heaven Dao sovereign's mouth, but it only lasted for a moment. The purple-clothed man used his aura to directly injure the Heaven Dao sovereign. The Heaven Dao sovereign steadied himself and stared at the purple-clothed man. She was both embarrassed and angry. Her chest heaved up and down, but she couldn't speak. She clearly didn't expect the purple-clothed man to be this powerful. This guy is so powerful. At the same time, Tian Sha and the Sacred Heaven Ancestors' eyes quivered as they looked at each other in shock. The purple-clothed man's strength had exceeded their expectations. The two of them were stronger than the Heaven Dao sovereign, but there was no way they could injure the Heaven Dao sovereign just by clashing their auras. However, this purple-clothed man was extremely terrifying. He injured the Heaven Dao sovereign with his aura alone. The Heaven Dao sovereign was indeed a bit careless. But if the purple-clothed man wasn't so much stronger than her, he wouldn't have been able to injure her directly. Venerable, is this all you've got? The purple-clothed man raised an eyebrow and looked at the Heaven Dao sovereign with disdain. Your strength is still far from the Lord of the Stars and the Martial Sky Continent's president. You can stand arrogantly before them, not because you're strong, but because of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion behind you. If you weren't the Heaven Dao sovereign, you would have been killed by the Lord of the Stars. The voice was calm, but it was filled with extreme disdain. Who are you? The Heaven Dao sovereign's eyes trembled with hatred as he asked coldly. The purple-clothed man's words were harsh, but they were the truth. The Heaven Dao sovereign felt strange. The Lord of the Stars and the Martial Sky Continent's president were afraid of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. So why wasn't the purple-clothed man afraid? Venerable, are you wondering why I'm not afraid of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion? The purple-clothed man could tell what the Heaven Dao sovereign was thinking. He sneered and said, "In the all-heaven sacred world, everyone is afraid of the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion. That's because they feel that the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion has the power to take everything from them. But to someone who has nothing left, the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion is nothing to be afraid of." With that, the purple-clothed man's lips curled into a sinister smile. He stared coldly at the heavenly Tao sovereign and said, "Lord Sovereign, do you still need to fear the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion for a wandering ghost like me?" The Heaven Dao sovereign's eyes trembled as he suddenly thought of something. He was stunned for a few seconds before he said, "You're the Heaven Hunter on the heaven-defying ranking." Heaven Hunter. The Heavenly Shah and Divine Heaven Ancestors' expressions changed at the same time. They were quite shocked. It turned out that this purple-robed man was the legendary Heaven Hunter. The so-called Heaven Hunter was someone who entered the heaven-defying ranking of the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion to hunt the Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion existed in the all-heaven sacred world and had destroyed countless powerful forces. Among these destroyed forces, some people did not die and instead escaped the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion's pursuit. These people rebelled against the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion and hunted the people of the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. Thus, they were listed on the heaven-defying ranking and called the Heaven Hunter. The Heaven Shah and Divine Heaven Ancestor had only heard of the Heaven Hunter before, but they had never seen one before. At this moment, a Heaven Hunter actually appeared in front of them. How could they not be shocked? No wonder this purple-clothed man was not afraid of the Heaven Dao sovereign at all. He was someone who hunted the Heavenly Dao. Could it be that this person followed the Heaven Dao sovereign here to hunt him down? The Heaven Shah and Divine Heaven Ancestor thought of this at the same time and their expressions changed. Are you here to kill me? At the same time, the Heaven Tao sovereign also thought of this. Her beautiful eyes trembled, and her face revealed a horrified expression. Chapter 34:54. Chapter 34:49. Reverse Yuan Force, Niet Tian. Seeing the purple-robed man looking at Niet Tian, Heaven Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor's expressions changed at the same time and became nervous. The purple-robed man, the Heaven Hunter, didn't come to kill Heaven Tao Sovereign, but for Niet Tian. Heaven Tao Sovereign was also surprised and looked at Niet Tian in shock. She finally realized that the most important person here should be Niet Tian. Heaven Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor were both experts of the All-Heaven Sacred Realm. The two of them appeared in the same realm at the same time and almost fought because of Niet Tian. Heaven Tao Sovereign's attention was focused on Heaven Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor. The appearance of the purple-robed man made her panic. Only now did she have the time to carefully observe Niet Tian. Sacred Realm. In the blink of an eye, the Tao of Heaven sensed Niet Tian's strength, and her pretty face flickered with astonishment. She was very sure that Niet Tian was a realm martial artist, but he was at the first level of heavenly charm. Without a doubt, this meant that Niet Tian was a realm martial artist. She never thought that Niet Tian's talent was so terrifying. Could it be that Heaven Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor came to the realm to recruit Niet Tian? When a realm became sacred, it would cause the heaven and earth to resonate. Some martial artists with strong senses could feel this resonance. If Heaven Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor were both here for Niet Tian, then it wouldn't be strange. After all, a realm sacred martial artist was too terrifying. He could definitely decide the fate of a sect. Then why did the purple-robed man come for Niet Tian? The Heaven Hunter was not like other cultivators who flocked to martial Tao geniuses. The Heaven Hunter would not cherish a martial Tao genius. Could the purple-robed man be here to kill Niet Tian? You came for me? At this moment, Niet Tian was also stunned. He looked at the purple-robed man with a trembling gaze. Then, he thought of something and his expression changed. This purple-robed man was here for the 9th level Chaos Beast. In an instant, Niet Tian thought of the purple-robed man's intentions. Almost all the experts that Niet Tian met warned him not to use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. Even the Heaven's Chosen One, who looked exactly like Cher, had specially sealed the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. Previously, when Niet Tian was in danger, he did not even use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. However, in order to save Mo Rushi, he had no choice but to use the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast. The Ghost Thorch and the others had said that once the 9th Extreme Chaos Beast was used, it would attract powerful enemies. As expected, the purple-robed man appeared. The purple-robed man was so powerful that he could even injure a heavenly Tao supremacy. This person was indeed terrifyingly powerful. My name is Feng Mo Bimming. At this moment, the purple-robed man looked at Niet Tian and said his name with a faint smile. His eyes were extremely gloomy. Kid, you should know why I'm here, right? 9th Extreme. Niet Tian's eyes trembled as he uttered these 2 words. Kid, you're not that stupid after all. Feng Mo Bimming smiled faintly, but his eyes were as dark as the abyss. Now, hand over what I want. What if I don't hand it over? Niet Tian's heart trembled. He forced himself to calm down and said in a low voice, Don't hand it over? Feng Mo Bimming laughed coldly. Then he swept his gaze across everyone present and said, If you don't hand it over, everyone here will die. Also, this territory will cease to exist. Upon hearing Devil Sealer's words, Niet Tian's eyes flickered, and even his mind shuddered. If he didn't hand over the 9th Extreme Chaos Beast, Feng Mo Bimming would kill everyone, including the heavenly Tao Supremacy, Tian Sha, and the Divine Heaven Ancestor. He would even destroy the Shadow Territory and even the entire Myriad Realms. This Feng Mo Bimming was truly violent. He didn't put Tian Sha and the Divine Heaven Ancestor in his eyes at all. Kid, hand over that little guy. At this time, Feng Mo Bimming smiled and said, A person like you doesn't deserve it. Feng Mo Biming, you're too arrogant. In the next second, before Nyatian could respond, the divine heaven ancestor stepped forward and said coldly, even if you are a heaven hunter that even the heavenly Tao sacred pavilion is wary of, don't even think about touching Nyatian today. Oh, is that so? Feng Mo Biming sneered and suddenly turned around. His eyes were like sharp blades that pierced through the divine heaven ancestor's body. Oomph. The divine heaven ancestor also sneered and said, I want to see how strong you are. Don't overestimate yourself. Feng Mo Biming smiled coldly and immediately unleashed a palm attack. Suddenly, a horrifying black palm shadow appeared in the sky. It was like a rolling dark cloud that caused the space to rumble and crazily pressed towards the divine heaven ancestor. The divine heaven ancestor's expression suddenly changed. The aura of Feng Mo Biming was different from ordinary Sage Realm cultivators. The power he released seemed to be even stronger than ordinary Sage Realm cultivators. In the next second, the divine heaven ancestor's figure moved. A long sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed forward. A majestic sword shadow rolled out like a rolling mountain. Boom! Then, the palm and the sword collided. Two terrifying forces exploded, causing the sky to shake violently as if the entire world was about to collapse. Boom! Immediately after, a muffled sound came. The divine heaven ancestor's figure was directly blown away, leaving a bloody trail in the sky. Senior Qiming, seeing this, Nyatian's expression suddenly changed, and he couldn't help but exclaim, Qiming! At the same time, Tian Sha's voice came. His figure flashed like a ray of light and caught the divine heaven ancestor. Are you okay? Tian Sha used his hand to stabilize the divine heaven ancestor and asked, I'm fine. The divine heaven ancestor's expression was gloomy as he coldly stared at Feng Mo Biming. Oomph. The corner of Feng Mo Biming's mouth twitched as he sneered. The Great Heaven Martial Association's president only has this kind of strength. Truly disappointing. The divine heaven ancestor's expression was gloomy and he couldn't say anything. Feng Mo Biming's strength was truly too strong, far exceeding his expectations. What shocked him the most was that the aura emitted by Feng Mo Biming was completely different from ordinary Sage Realm cultivators. It was as if Feng Mo Biming's Sage Realm contained a dark force. It was this dark force that allowed Feng Mo Biming's strength to far surpass other cultivators of the same level. The power you're using is the inverse Yuan force, right? At this time, Tian Sha suddenly looked at Feng Mo Biming with a cold light flashing in his eyes. Feng Mo Biming couldn't help but exclaim after hearing Tian Sha's words. His expression immediately changed. Chapter 3455. Chapter 3450. Joining forces inverse Yuan force? Heaven Tao Sovereign and Divine Heaven Ancestor were both stunned and puzzled after hearing Tian Sha's words. They had never heard of inverse Yuan power before. At this time, Feng Mo Biming sneered and stared at Tian Sha with murderous intent. I didn't think that there would still be someone in this world who knows about inverse Yuan power. Lord of Myriad Stars, it seems that I have underestimated you. It really is inverse Yuan power. Tian Sha looked at Feng Mo and Bai Ming, and his expression suddenly changed. It was as though he had gone stupid. He said in a daze, could that force really exist? What inverse Yuan power? What organization? Nyatian looked at the sky fiend and furrowed his brows. His expression was extremely ugly. He didn't know what inverse Yuan power was, but Feng Mo Biming was able to heavily injure Divine Heaven Ancestor with one palm. This was too frightening. Just now, Feng Mo Biming and Divine Heaven Ancestor's attacks were extremely powerful. If it wasn't for Heaven's Path barrier that stabilized the space, the entire Juying domain would have collapsed already. However, Nyatian was very confused. Just what kind of power was inverse Yuan power that could injure Divine Heaven Ancestor directly? Tian Sha, it seems that you know more than I imagined. Feng Mo Biming's expression darkened. His murderous intent couldn't be controlled anymore, as if it was about to explode in the next second. Tian Sha not only knew about inverse yuan power, but also the force behind it. This was something Feng Mo Biming didn't expect. It seems at this time, I will have to go on a killing spree. Feng Mo Biming spoke in a low voice. A black whirlpool appeared in his hand, releasing a terrifying dark energy, as if it contained a bottomless abyss. When Tian Sha felt the frightening power in the void, his eyes couldn't help but tremble as his face darkened. Tian Sha, what exactly is the inverse yuan power? On the side, Divine Heaven Ancestor frowned and couldn't help but ask. Tian Sha, the Black Root, the original Terminator. Tian Sha spoke. In this world outside of the 9 primordial powers, there is also the opposite of inverse yuan. Niguan. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor's eyes trembled with shock. He had lived for millions of years and had never heard of Niguan. Niguan is born against heaven and earth. Is the dark side of heaven and earth. The saint power condensed by Niguan is Yuan power. Tian Sha's voice was low as he continued. The power used to seal demons and protect lives is the inverse energy. The heavenly ancestor's frown deepened. His wrinkled face became gloomy and murderous. No wonder he felt that the aura of demon sealing and life warding was completely different from that of other Saint Realm warriors. It turned out that the saint power that could seal demons and protect lives was the inverse Yuan power. It seemed that behind the Ni Yuan force, there was a terrible force called Ni Yuan Hagen, who was the original Terminator. Devil Sealer sneered. Lord of myriad stars, you really know a lot. But these secrets will cost you your life. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, his body trembled and a surge of inverse Yuan force shot into the sky. It condensed into a huge demonic figure around his body. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, like a demon god that had emerged from hell. Tian Sha, it seems like the two of us will have to work together today. Divine Heaven Ancestor's eyes were not filled with fear, but a strong desire to fight. Skypath Sovereign, please reinforce the space-time. We are about to make our move. Tian Sha suddenly looked up at Skypath Sovereign. Yes. Skypath Sovereign furrowed her brows and nodded. Of course, she knew that this was a moment of life and death. The three of them had to work together to have a chance of survival. Once again, Devil Sealer sneered and said, You 3 little shrimps think you can fight against me? The power of the inverse Yuan is not something you can imagine. The inverse Yuan power was born against heaven and earth. It was the nemesis of the 9 primordial saint power and had absolute suppression over all other saint powers in this world. It was not an exaggeration to say that Devil Sealer could fight against 10 cultivators of the same level with this inverse Yuan power. Therefore, he didn't put Tian Sha and Divine Heaven Ancestor in his eyes. At this time, Divine Heaven Ancestor's voice resounded. Sir Saint, let me borrow your saint's aura. Okay. Yet Tian's eyes trembled as he agreed. Of course, he knew that Divine Heaven Ancestor wanted to borrow the saint's aura from the 8th star river in his body. Every star emissary left behind something in the star river. The 8th star emissary's scarlet life, pure heart left behind, was the saint's aura. Only after fusing with this saint's aura would he be able to unleash his true strength. Boom! In the next second, Tian's body released the saint's aura and enveloped Divine Heaven Ancestor. The latter instantly absorbed it. After obtaining the saint aura, the aura around the Sacred Heaven Ancestor's body instantly surged like a surging flood, majestic and imposing. Interesting. Devil Sealer felt Divine Heaven Ancestor's rising aura, but he was not afraid at all. Instead, he laughed. Tian Sha. Divine Heaven Ancestor's eyes darkened as he looked at Tian Sha. The latter understood and nodded. Kill. Next, Divine Heaven Ancestor let out a roar and released his aura. The long sword in his hand slashed across the void. A blinding sword ray shot out like a waterfall from the 9 heavens, wanted to split the heaven and earth in half. Buzz! In the next second, A sword cry resounded as a sword shadow appeared. It was tens of thousands of meters long, and like a violent dragon, it directly pressed down towards Devil Sealer. Devil Sealer frowned as he felt the terrifying sword pressure coming towards him. His eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He didn't expect that divine heaven ancestor, who was just wounded by his palm, could explode with such terrifying power in an instant. In the distant void, the Heaven's Path Sovereign's beautiful eyes also trembled as her charming face froze. Divine Heaven Ancestor's strength far exceeded her expectations. As for Nyetian and the others, they had already retreated hundreds of thousands of meters away. Their faces were full of disbelief as they stared at the scene in the sky. Cultivators like them were still far from understanding divine Heaven Ancestor's strength. This was an unimaginable power for them. Not bad. Unfortunately, it's still a bit weak. At this moment, Devil Sealing Bimink's voice resounded, after which he slapped out with his palm as a surge of inverse yuan force gushed out, instantly blooming in the air, transforming into a black lotus that was as big as a mountain. It shot out with a loud rumble, enveloping the sword shadows in the air. Lone Star Sky opened. At the same time, Tian Sha's figure also moved. He let out a roar as a terrifying aura surged from his body. Then, Dark Star runes appeared and covered his entire body. Chapter 3456. See you later. The 8th Sky Messenger's Scarlet Life Loyal Heart obtained the Saint's Chi. Its aura soared to the extreme as it unleashed a sword attack. Double Absolute Star Lord, Tian Sha, activated Tian Sha's Lone Star. His entire body was shrouded in terrifying star runes. Two experts, one Sky Messenger and the other Forbidden Star Lord, teamed up to kill Feng, Mo, and Pai Ming. Those two are way too strong. Nyetian's heart was filled with shock as he looked at the two figures. He could see that the Scarlet Life Loyal Heart and Tian Sha's teamwork was very well coordinated. Their auras were interlinked and harmonized, boosting each other's strength to the maximum. It was clear that these two, who almost fought not long ago, were very familiar with each other. They most likely fought together before. Die! At this time, Tian Sha roared and struck out with his palm. The star runes on his body suddenly moved and condensed into a giant beast of darkness in the void. It was incomparably violent as it pressed forward. Boom! Crack, crack, crack. At this moment, the air shook and couldn't withstand the pressure and directly collapsed. Boom! Crack, crack, crack. At the same time, Feng Mo and Pai Ming's Ni Yuan Black Lotus clashed with the Divine Heaven Ancestor's mighty sword shadow. The air trembled and immediately exploded. Waves of terrifying waves surged out like thousands of demons dancing, seemingly wanting to devour everything. Boom, boom, boom. In the air, ear-piercing noises continuously resounded as if the world was about to be destroyed. Too scary. The spectators' eyes trembled as the shock in their hearts reached the extreme. Even though the heavenly path reinforced the space, it still couldn't withstand the violent impact and directly collapsed. Feng Mo and Pai Ming's strength was too terrifying. The air became chaotic, and the four figures in the sky were completely submerged. Nyetian's eyes trembled as his nerves tensed up. His heart was about to jump out of his throat. After a while, the chaotic space gradually calmed down and became clear again. The heavenly path and the other three figures appeared before everyone. But at this moment, the four were in a very sorry state. The heavenly path's face was pale. His white robe had several bloody wounds caused by the space-time storm, but she was already considered a good person. On the other hand, Tian Sha and the others were in an even more miserable state. Tian Sha and the sacred heaven ancestor were drenched in blood. Their bodies trembled as if they couldn't stand straight anymore. As for Feng Mo Pai Ming, his body was also badly mutilated, his face as pale as paper. Clearly, he was severely injured. Hiss! The crowd couldn't help but gasp when they saw this scene. Feng Mo Pai Ming fought against Tian Sha and old ancestor Sheng Tian, but in the end, all three were heavily injured. How is this possible? After a long time, Feng Mo Pai Ming suddenly roared with a ferocious expression. How can you resist the inverse yuan power? The inverse origin power was extremely oppressive to all 9 primordial divine powers. However, Tian Sha and the sacred heaven ancestor weren't suppressed by the inverse yuan force. This was something that Feng Mo and Bai Ming could never have imagined. Why didn't the inverse yuan force suppress these 2 people? He faintly felt that Tian Sha and divine heaven ancestor's power was different from others. It seemed to be a power that surpassed the sacred power. The inverse yuan power is only SOSO. Tian Sha's body shook, and the blood on his body was washed away as he said coldly, Feng Mo Pai Ming, if you still want to fight, then we will accompany you to the end. Old ancestor Shang Tian stepped forward and said in a deep voice. The 2 of them weren't heavily injured, so they could still fight. Lord of myriad stars, President Marshal Sky, I will remember you too. We will meet again. Feng Mo Pai Ming's expression was gloomy. After a long silence, he finally let out a low roar, and his figure turned into a ray of light and disappeared. His figure was like a ghost, quickly disappearing into the void. After confirming that Feng Mo Pai Ming had left, Tian Sha and old ancestor Shang Tian's tense expressions finally relaxed a bit. They looked strong on the surface, but they didn't really want to fight against Feng Mo Pai Ming. The inverse yuan power was too strong, and Feng Mo Pai Ming clearly hadn't reached his limit yet. Luckily, Tian Sha and old ancestor Shang Tian used the power of the stars, so they weren't suppressed by the inverse yuan power. If it was any other expert today, they would definitely die in the hands of Feng Mo Pai Ming. A moment later, old ancestor Shang Tian looked at Tian Dao and said in a deep voice, Sir, he has already left. You don't need to be so nervous. That guy, just who is he? Tian Dao's face was gloomy and cold. Tian Sha frowned and said impatiently, He is Ni Yuan Huygens man. Go back and ask those old monsters in the heavenly Dao sacred pavilion. Then you'll naturally know who he is. Tian Sha frowned and didn't say anything else. She wasn't an unreasonable person. After all, Tian Sha and old ancestor Shang Tian saved her life just now. If she encountered Feng Mo Pai Ming alone, she would die without a doubt. Lord of myriad stars, President Marshal Sky, this time, you guys protected this territory and made up for your previous mistakes. Your contributions offset your mistakes, so I will not pursue this matter any further. Tian Dao thought for a moment and suddenly took out the heavenly sacred token. He threw it to old ancestor Shang Tian and said, Keep the heavenly sacred token. Thank you, sir. Old ancestor Shang Tian was stunned for a moment before quickly bowing to express his gratitude. He didn't want to use the heavenly sacred token, so he didn't show it at the beginning. It was just that Tian Sha and Tian Dao had a conflict, so he had no choice but to use the heavenly sacred token. Now that Tian Dao returned the heavenly sacred token to him, he was pleasantly surprised. It seemed that this heavenly Dao sovereign wasn't as overbearing as he appeared on the surface. I will take my leave. Don't stay here for too long. The heaven Dao sovereign nodded slightly. After saying this, his figure moved and he left. Something even more important than the collapse of the territory happened today. She must immediately return to the heavenly Dao sacred pavilion and report everything to the pavilion master. Ni Yuan Huygens. Ni Yuan Huygens. The original Terminator. She had never heard of these before. Could it be that there was a very terrifying dark force hiding in the heavenly sacred realm? Tian Sha and old ancestor Shang Tian let out a sigh of relief when Tian Dao sovereign left. Tian Sha, it's time for you to leave. Old ancestor Shang Tian looked at Tian Sha and said, Feng Mo Pai Ming and Tian Dao sovereign's departure put him and Tian Sha against each other once again. Qi Ming, I don't need the star origin stones now. Tian Sha frowned and turned around abruptly. His hawk-like eyes were locked on a Tang 13 as he said, But he must come with me. HM? Nye Tian frowned when he heard Tian Sha's words. He just let out a sigh of relief but now he was on tenterhooks again. He didn't expect that Tian Sha wanted to take Tang 13 away. Killing Destruction Wolf. Old Ancestor Sheng Tian frowned and looked at Tang 13. His expression changed when he felt the aura inside her body. Chapter 34:57. I will follow you, slaughter, vanquishing wolf. Hearing these 3 words, Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression changed. It was obvious that Tian Sha didn't want Tang 13, but the slaughter vanquishing wolf star soul in her body. Tian Sha, what do you mean by this? Ancestor Sacred Heaven's expression was murderous as he stared coldly at Tian Sha. Qi Ming, you know what I want. Other than Lang Chun, he is the only one who successfully fused with the slaughter vanquishing wolf star soul. Do you think I will let him leave? Tian Sha didn't back down and spoke coldly. His eyes stared at Tang 13 like a wolf staring at a little lamb. Lang Chun, hearing this name, Ancestor Sacred Heaven's eyes trembled as his expression became extremely cold. You still have the face to mention his name? Do you remember that you were the one who killed him? Lang Chun was the name of the previous slaughter vanquishing wolf star sovereign, and Lang Chun died in the hands of Tian Sha. Tian Sha killed the previous slaughter vanquishing wolf star sovereign? Yet Tian's eyes narrowed as his expression changed. He was quite surprised. Of course, he could tell that Lang Chun was the previous slaughter vanquishing wolf star sovereign. Tian Sha Lone Star and slaughter vanquishing wolf star sovereign were known as the dual absolute star souls. Who would have thought that the slaughter vanquishing wolf star sovereign would die in the hands of Tian Sha Lone Star sovereign? I didn't kill Lang Chun. Tian Sha was also very agitated at this moment. He spoke in a low voice. I only defeated him. Is that so? Ancestor Sacred Heaven sneered. That year, Lang Chun went to your arranged battle and never came back. You were the last person to see him. If he wasn't killed by you, then who is it? I have also been looking for the murderer. Tian Sha's expression was gloomy as he suppressed his anger. Oomph. Ancestor Sacred Heaven sneered. If Lang Chun wasn't killed by you, then how could the slaughter vanquishing wolf star soul be in your hands? Don't tell me you want me to believe that the annihilation wolf astral soul automatically ran into your hands? Tian Sha's eyes suddenly narrowed, and his face was so gloomy that it looked like it was about to drip blood. He was silent for a moment before a cold light flashed in his eyes. Since you've already determined that Lang Chun was killed by me, no matter how I explain, it's unnecessary. Then there is no need to explain, just admit it. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor smiled cold with a murderous glint in his eyes. Qi Ming, I must take this kid with me. Sky Fiend, on the other hand, had calmed down. He stared at Tang 13 with determination and said word by word, no matter the cost. With my Scarlet Life loyal heart here, don't even think about taking anyone away. Divine Heaven Ancestor didn't back down at all. He took a step forward and his aura surged like a violent ocean, extremely terrifying. Qi Ming, do you really want to fight with me? Tian Sha's eyes sank and his face turned cold. You should ask yourself this. You have already killed the Killing Wolf Star Monarch. Do you still want to kill a second one? The Sacred Heaven Ancestor spoke in a low voice. The sword intent around him was sharp and murderous, as if the entire heaven and earth would be torn apart in the next moment. I didn't kill Lang Chun. Tian Sha's eyes narrowed as he suddenly roared like a ferocious beast. Seeing this, Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and his expression changed. From Tian Sha's reaction, perhaps Lang Chun really wasn't killed by him. With Tian Sha's arrogant personality, he would probably admit to what he did. Tian Sha, why did you ask Tang 13 to go with you? After thinking for a moment, Tian took a step forward and asked. Tian Sha suddenly turned around. His eyes were as sharp as blades, piercing through Tian's body. He hesitated for a moment and said, I want to see what's so special about this kid that he can actually fuse with the Killing Wolf Star Monarch. The Killing Wolf Star Soul was not the strongest among all the Forbidden Star Souls, but it was the hardest to fuse with. When Tian Sha obtained the Killing Wolf Star Soul, he was in a hurry to find someone to fuse with, but he couldn't find anyone. In the end, He had no choice but to break the killing wolf star soul into 7 murders, army destroyer, and ravenous wolf star souls. Unfortunately, he still couldn't find a suitable person to fuse with these 3 star souls. After that, the starry sky saint, Dong Wang Junrong, fell. Tian Sha sensed that the star origin stones had entered the myriad domains. In order to find the star origin stones, he sent Ing Qinyu into the myriad domains and gave the 7 murders, army destroyer, and ravenous wolf star souls to Ing Qinyu. He told the latter to use these 3 star souls to search for the star origin stones and plunder other sacred world cornerstones. The Zhuiying Divine Palace wanted to find the Dragon Spring Vein and the 9 great origin sources. They were all sacred world cornerstones. Who would have thought that the killing wolf star soul, under a freak combination of factors, would actually reform and be fused with by Tang 13? Tian Sha's Lone Star and killing wolf star souls were inextricably linked. It wasn't strange that Tian Sha was so obsessed with the killing wolf star souls. Among all the Star Lords, Tian Sha was the most eccentric person. His only friend was Lang Chun. But Lang Chun had been killed after a battle with him. Everyone thought that he, Tian Sha, had killed Lang Chun. Tian Sha believed that before Lang Chun died, he would have left behind a clue about the murderer in the killing wolf star soul. However, this clue would only appear after the killing wolf star soul was fused again. Tang 13 had fused with the killing wolf star soul, so Tian Sha was certain that there would be a clue about Lang Chun's killer on him. This was why he had to take Tang 13 away. Lang Chun was his best friend and also his only friend. He could suffer injustice, but he could not let Lang Chun die in vain. Is that all? Nie Tian looked at Tian Sha as his eyes trembled uncontrollably. The corners of his mouth curled into a strange smile. He could tell that Tian Sha was hiding something. Moreover, he could tell from Tian Sha's eyes that he had no intention of killing Tang 13. On the contrary, Tian Sha seemed to care about Tang 13 in a strange way. Nie Tian, I have already taken a step back. Don't push your luck. Tian Sha spoke coldly. His eyes were as cold as the abyss. Nie Tian, let me make my own choice. At this moment, Tang 13, who had been silent all this time, stepped forward and spoke softly. Nie Tian looked at Tang 13 and frowned. His expression changed. Kid, you are very talented. You should have made your choice long ago. Tian Sha's eyes trembled as he looked at Tang 13. If you stay by my side, your strength will increase very quickly. I don't think you want to be suppressed by Nie Tian for the rest of your life, right? After all, living under someone's shadow is not a good feeling. Nie Tian heard Tian Sha's words, and his face darkened. This guy was trying to sow discord between him and Tang 13. One has to admit that all martial artists were prideful. This was especially true for geniuses. They had the desire to compete. Just like Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost. If they stayed by Nie Tian's side, of course they would have the desire to compete. After all, every martial artist wanted to reach the peak of martial arts. To put it bluntly, even though Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost were already Star Lords, they still wanted to defeat Nie Tian. Therefore, even among friends, there was a competitive relationship. If Nie Tian is stronger than me, that's because of his capabilities. If I want to surpass him, that's my ambition. But this doesn't affect me. We are friends. At this moment, Tang 13 smiled gently. She looked at Tian Sha and said, My heart is not as dark as yours. Is that so? Tian Sha smiled coldly and asked, Then what's your choice? Will you follow me? Chapter 3458. Heart Linking Grand Array. Tang 13. Hearing Tang 13's words, Nie Tian's eyes widened and his expression changed. Tang 13 actually chose to go with Tian Sha. Tian Sha's eyes were also burning with excitement. He didn't think that Tang 13 would actually be willing to leave with him. Ancestor Divine Heaven was also stunned and couldn't help but exclaim, Nie Tian, I know what I am doing. Tang 13, at this moment, was very calm. She faintly smiled. Everyone has their own path. I am very clear about my path. Nie Tian frowned and stared at Tang 13. He was stunned for a long time, but he didn't say anything. Brat, you have fused with the murder wolf star soul. You should be able to sense it, right? At this time, Tian Sha looked at Tang 13 and smiled. Yes. Tang 13 nodded and said, there seems to be a divine sensine sealed inside the murder wolf star soul. However, with my current strength, I cannot unseal this scene. Indeed, Tian Sha's eyes shrunk as he heard Tang 13's words. Previously, he had only guessed that Lang Chun might have left some clues inside the murder wolf star soul before his death. Now that he received confirmation from Tang 13, he was also very shocked. As long as Tang 13 could unseal that divine sense scene, he would be able to find the real killer of Lang Chun. Qi Ming, this brat is willing to go with me. Are you still going to stop him? After a while, Tian Sha calmed down and asked Ancestor Divine Heaven. Tian Sha, regardless of whether you personally killed Lang Chun or not, his death is related to you. Ancestor Divine Heaven was silent for a while and said, I hope you remember that you have already killed one murder wolf star sovereign. Don't kill a second one. Tang 13 will follow me. I will naturally protect his safety. Tian Sha's expression was gloomy as he said, even if it is for Lang Chun, I will absolutely not let anything happen to him. That's good. Ancestor Divine Heaven replied coldly. Then his silhouette flickered and arrived next to Tian and bowed. Saint Lord, do you agree to let your friend go with Tian Sha? Tian's eyes narrowed as his lips curled into a smile. He looked at Tian Sha and said, I believe that the Lord of Myriad Stars would not harm Junior. However, I still have to remind the Lord of Myriad Stars that if anything happens to Tang 13, I will kill you personally. 13, Tian Sha looked at Tian and sneered. Brat, when you have the strength of Dongwang Jingrong, you can come and threaten me. Let's go. Then, he turned to Tang 13 and said coldly. Tang 13 nodded and walked to Tian's side. With a faint smile, she said, Tian, I'm leaving. Tian 13, Tang 13 had always been someone he thought highly of. She was very similar to her grandfather, Tang Hao. However, she was more talented than Tang Hao, more determined and smarter. Tian believed that even if 13 was by Tian Sha's side, he would still have the ability to protect himself. Then, 13 didn't say anything else and left with Tian Sha. Qian Longxia and the Myriad Star Pavilion's people also left. Gazing in the direction where Tang 13 had disappeared, Tian thought to himself, Tang 13 is not someone who will stay in a small pond. He has chosen his own path. One day, his name will shake the entire Saints world. He believed that in the future, he would meet 13 again in the sacred world. Saint Lord, I should also leave. At this time, Ancestor Divine Heaven looked at Tian and said with a heavy tone. His expression was a bit ugly. Senior Scarlet Life, you are leaving now? Tian frowned. He didn't expect Ancestor Divine Heaven to leave in such a hurry. Saint Lord, I am still a person of the sacred world and cannot stay in the realm for too long. Ancestor Divine Heaven nodded and bitterly smiled. Yes, thank you, Senior Scarlet Life. Tian nodded and solemnly expressed his gratitude. Saint Lord, Ancestor Divine Heaven looked at Tian with a troubled expression and said, I'm afraid that I will have to take away the people in the star forbidden space. Tian frowned and went blank for a moment before asking, why? He didn't expect that Ancestor Divine Heaven wanted to take away Emo Rushi and his child. The star forbidden space was originally a mother sacrificial formation. Under the impact of the star runes left behind by the previous Star Saint Lord, the formation's aura was forcefully changed into a heart-linking formation. Ancestor Divine Heaven frowned and said, the so-called heart-linking formation means that the hearts of mother and child are connected. Both mother and child will absorb the power of the formation at the same time and become stronger. However, the formation cannot be opened at this time. Otherwise, both mother and child will be in danger. Why? Tian looked at Ancestor Divine Heaven and couldn't help but ask. When the heart-linking formation is opened, the auras of the two inside will collide. Only then can they break out of the formation. Ancestor Divine Heaven frowned and explained, however, if the difference in strength between the two is too great, then one of them may be injured or even have a life-threatening situation. Only when the mother and child are at the same level and have similar strengths can the heart-linking formation be opened. At that time, both of them will not be in danger. After listening to Ancestor Divine Heaven's explanation, Nietion's expression became extremely gloomy. He didn't really understand, but he understood that the opening of the heart-linking formation would cause the auras of Mo Rushi and the child to collide once. If the difference in strength between the two was too great, then one of them would be in danger. Senior Crimson Life, you mean to say that Mo Rushi's strength is too strong? If we open the heart-linking grand formation now, it will hurt the child, right? Nietion asked Divine Heaven Ancestor after a moment of silence. Mo Rushi was currently at the God Realm while the child had just been born. The mother's sacrificial formation was not complete yet, so the child's strength must be very weak and couldn't withstand the impact of Mo Rushi's aura. No. At this time, Ancestor Divine Heaven shook his head with a strange expression and said, if we open the heart-linking formation now, then the one in danger is not the child, but Mo Rushi. HM? After hearing Ancestor Divine Heaven's words, Nietion's pupils constricted. His expression suddenly changed, and his entire body became stiff. If the heart-linking formation was open now, then the one in danger was not the child, but Mo Rushi. How could this be? Could it be that when the formation was opened, the weaker ones would be more likely to be injured? Could it be? Nietion's eyes trembled as he suddenly thought of something. With a face full of shock, he hesitated for a long time before saying, could it be that the child's strength is even stronger than Mo Rushi's? Mo Rushi was a martial artist with the strength of a god realm, yet she wasn't as strong as a newborn. This was too unbelievable. Yes. Ancestor Divine Heaven looked at Nietion and heavily nodded his head. Then he said word by word, Saint Lord, your child is a martial artist born to be a saint. Chapter 3459. Saint born. Saint born. What did this mean? Didn't this mean that the child of Nietion and Mo Rushi would be a saint the moment he was born? Desolate Ghost was standing to the side. After hearing the conversation between Divine Heaven Ancestor and Nietion, he also froze like a block of wood. A person born as a saint, what kind of situation was this? This was too frightening. At this time, Divine Heaven Ancestor looked at Nietion and gravely said, born as a saint, it is precisely that child who was born as a saint. This. Nietion's eyes suddenly shrank. His face became sluggish, and he couldn't say anything for a long time. His and Mo Rushi's child was really born as a saint. How could this be? One had to know that the saint realm was a realm that countless people yearned for. Not to mention warriors from other realms. Even those who were born in the sacred realm were very few in number. A child born in a realm was already a sage at birth. This was simply too shocking and unbelievable. A moment later, Divine Heaven Ancestor waited for Nietion to calm down a bit before asking, Saint Lord, I sensed an aura in your body that has yet to resonate with your bloodline. When that child was born, he must have had a strong bloodline resonance with you, right? Yes. Nietion's eyes were still a bit sluggish as he nodded. You were able to become a saint in a realm because of the impact of the bloodline resonance, right? Divine Heaven Ancestor furrowed his brows and continued to ask. Yes. Nietion nodded again. That's right. Divine Heaven Ancestor's eyes became serious and flashed with a glimmer of light. Even though that child absorbed a huge amount of power from the sacrificial mother formation, it was not enough for him to be born as a saint. However, when he was born, he had a bloodline resonance with you. At the same time, the power in your body was impacted and your realm became a saint. It was also at this time that the child had a second bloodline resonance with you. However, this second bloodline resonance was triggered by you. So, when you became a saint, that child also became a saint along with you. This. Nietion sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He stood rooted to the spot, unable to utter a single word for a long time. He had never imagined that things would turn out like this. That child had already absorbed the power of the mother ritual formation and Mo Rushi, coupled with the fact that his bloodline power was extremely powerful, and he just so happened to encounter Nietion's domain ascension. He was born as a sage. However, it was also because of this that the heart-linking formation could not be activated at this moment. Mo Rushi was only an overgod, while the child was a heavenly charm holy disciple. The difference in their cultivation levels was too great. It was not an exaggeration to say that a heavenly charm hallowed disciple's aura could instantly kill an overgod. If he activated the heart-linking formation now, Mo Rushi would definitely die. After a long time, Nietion calmed down and took out the star-forbidden space from the 9 extremes. He spread out his divine sense and seeped into the star-forbidden space. Sure enough, he sensed the aura of the heavenly rhythm power from the child wrapped in star symbols. This child was indeed, as divine heaven ancestor had said, born as a sage. However, Mo Rushi's aura was far from this child's. Senior Scarlet Life. When can the heart-linking formation be activated? Nietion retracted his divine sense and asked divine heaven ancestor with a frown. Must wait until the two's cultivation levels are at the same level. Divine heaven ancestor said in a serious tone. Nietion's expression darkened, and he was momentarily speechless. Mo Rushi was only a overgod right now. Who knew how long it would take for her to reach the sage realm? Saint Lord, don't worry. Inside the heart-linking formation, the two's auras are completely connected. That child will help Mo Rushi increase her strength as fast as possible. Divine heaven ancestor could tell what Nietion was thinking and said, however, the energy inside the star-forbidden space is a bit lacking. I must take it away to replenish the heart-linking formation's energy. Senior Scarlet Life. When do you think the heart-linking formation can be activated? Nietion's eyes flickered as he asked. Mo Rushi's talent was definitely not weak, but it was not as abnormal as Nietion's. It was hard to say how long it would take for her to reach the sage realm from the overgod realm. One had to know that Nietion took more than 10 years to reach the sage realm from the god realm. Moreover, his talent and opportunities were far from what other martial artists could compare to. 10 years at the latest, 5 years at the fastest. Divine heaven ancestor thought for a moment and gave a conservative estimate. So fast. Hearing divine heaven ancestor's words, Nietion's eyes flickered with joy. 5 to 10 years. This was definitely a time that he could accept. He originally thought that the heart-linking formation would take decades, or even centuries, or even millennia. That child's talent is very strong. With his help, Mo Rushi's strength will increase very quickly. Divine heaven ancestor forced a smile and said, in his opinion, the child in the star-forbidden space was even more talented than Nietion. However, without Nietion, this child would not have been born a sage. That's good. Nietion let out a long breath and smiled in relief. Then, Nietion looked at the star-forbidden space with tears in his eyes. He and Mo Rushi had been separated for 10 years. He didn't expect that they would be separated again before they could truly meet again. And their child, he couldn't even see the child's appearance clearly. Brat, you are much stronger than your father. You were born a sage. Your father must have gone through a lot of hardships to become a sage. Nietion looked at the child wrapped in star runes and couldn't help but smile. However, as he smiled, the corner of his eyes became blurry. After a long time, he finally retracted his divine intent. However, the image of Mo Rushi and the child still remained in his mind. Senior Scarlet Fate, please take care of my wife and child. Nietion took a deep breath and slightly calmed down. He then slightly bowed towards the sacred heaven ancestor. Don't worry, sacred lord. The sacred heaven ancestor was moved and solemnly said, I, the Scarlet Life loyal heart, swear on my martial Tao that I will protect the sacred mistress and little master with my life. Thank you. Nietion deeply nodded. The Scarlet Life loyal heart was just like its name. The life of a pure child, a loyal heart. The sacred heaven ancestor immediately put away the star forbidden space and then discussed a few things with Nyetian. Sacred Lord, this is a space-time sacred formation scroll. Finally, the sacred heaven ancestor took out a scroll and handed it to Nyetian. Open this scroll, and you can enter any elementary sacred world. Okay. Nyetian took the scroll and slightly nodded. Sacred Lord, this subordinate will take his leave. The sacred heaven ancestor didn't say anything else and was about to leave. Senior Scarlet Fate. At this time, Desolate Ghost suddenly spoke. This junior wants to follow Senior into the sacred world. The sacred heaven ancestor was startled and couldn't help but look at Nyetian. Senior Scarlet Fate, this is my friend, Desolate Ghost. He has already merged with the Azure Dragon Star Soul and is now the Azure Dragon Star Lord. If possible, please take him with you. Nyetian glanced at Desolate Ghost and lightly said. Desolate Ghost clearly wanted to pursue a higher level of martial Dao. This was not a big deal. Moreover, it was indeed a good choice for him to follow the sacred heaven ancestor. However, at this moment, the sacred heaven ancestor had a hesitant expression as if he didn't want to bring Desolate Ghost into the sacred world. If Senior has any difficulties, this junior will not force you. Desolate Ghost looked at the sacred heaven ancestor and bitterly smiled. Chapter 3460. The Rakshasa Sinner, yes. Desolate Ghost frowned after hearing the divine heaven ancestor's words, but he still nodded his head. The Rakshasa tribe was one of the 5 Asura tribes. Moreover, it was the lowest existence of the Asura tribe and was exiled to this realm. Nyetian also frowned. Could it be that the divine heaven ancestor didn't want to take Desolate Ghost away because of his identity as a member of the Asura tribe? Judging from your bloodline, you should be from the Rakshasa tribe of the 5 Asura tribes. The divine heaven ancestor's gaze swept across Desolate Ghost's body. Moreover, your bloodline is very powerful. You have already awakened one of the 5 Asura restrictions, the Hand of Destruction, correct? Desolate Ghost frowned. His face couldn't help but change. His eyes were filled with surprise. He didn't expect the divine heaven ancestor to be so familiar with the Asura tribe. The 5 Asura restrictions were the 5 forbidden bloodlines of the original Asura. Because they were too powerful, they were called the 5 Asura restrictions. However, as the Asura tribe evolved, the bloodlines of the 5 Asura restrictions were diluted and almost disappeared. Nyetian was no stranger to the 5 Asura forbidden bloodlines. Back when he was in the Saint Demon Secret Land, he had seen the other 5 Asura forbidden bloodlines. One had to admit that the legendary 5 Asura restrictions were indeed very powerful. However, the 5 Asura restrictions were a secret of the Asura tribe. How did the divine heaven ancestor know about it? Desolate Ghost, are you wondering why I know the 5 Asura forbidden arts and why I understand your bloodline so clearly? Divine heaven ancestor looked at Desolate Ghost and guessed what the latter was thinking, so he asked in a serious tone. Yes. Desolate Ghost nodded. He was indeed very curious. The divine heaven ancestor laughed and suddenly reached out with his palm. A rune appeared in his palm. This is... When Desolate Ghost saw that ball of runes, his eyes suddenly darkened, and his expression changed in a flash. Rakshasa runes. At the same time, Nyetian's eyes trembled, and he was stunned. The two didn't expect the divine heaven ancestor to condense the Rakshasa rune. Rakshasa rune. This was the bloodline of the Rakshasa tribe. How could the divine heaven ancestor condense it? You were from the Rakshasa clan? In the next moment, the Desolate Ghost, boundless Ghost, suddenly realized something and exclaimed in shock. He stared at the divine heaven ancestor in a daze. In the blink of an eye, he sensed an extremely familiar aura from the sacred heaven forefather. The aura of a bloodline. He was absolutely sure that the sacred heaven ancestor had the same bloodline as him. Even if the sacred heaven ancestor wasn't from the Rakshasa race, he was definitely from the Asura race. Nyetian was also taken aback and was speechless for a long time. How could he have known that the sacred heaven ancestor was from the Asura race? I am from the Azura clan, not the Rakshasa clan. At this time, the divine heaven ancestor's expression sank as he stared at Desolate Ghost and said, "If you want to leave with me, I must tell you one thing first." "What is it?" Desolate Ghost's gaze focused, and he was extremely surprised. "Back then, the Rakshasa tribe was exiled because of me," Divine Heaven Ancestor said with a solemn expression. "Because of you?" The Desolate Ghost, Boundless Ghost, was shocked and speechless. The Sacred Heaven Ancestor wasn't a member of the Rakshasa tribe, so why did he say that the Rakshasa tribe was exiled because of him? The Desolate Ghost, Boundless Ghost, was a bit confused. "Desolate Ghost, Boundless Ghost, if you want to know the truth, then follow me." The Sacred Heaven Ancestor looked at the Desolate Ghost, Boundless Ghost, and said, "Wait until you are strong enough, then I will tell you everything." "Okay." The Desolate Ghost, Boundless Ghost, was silent for a long time. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he heavily nodded. He faintly felt that the Sacred Heaven Ancestor was most likely the Rakshasa sinner recorded by the Rakshasa tribe. He didn't expect that the person he wanted to follow was the sinner of the tribe. However, at this moment, he wanted to know what happened to the Rakshasa tribe back then. "Let's go." The Sacred Heaven Ancestor glanced at the Desolate Ghost, Boundless Ghost, and slightly nodded. Then, the two didn't delay any longer and directly left. Nietian let out a long sigh as he stared at the spot where the two figures had disappeared. The Boundless Ghost Desolate leaving with the Sacred Heaven Ancestor was a good or bad thing. But no matter what, old Ancestor Sacred Heaven wouldn't harm Boundless Ghost Desolate. The Divine Heaven Ancestor said that the Rakshasa tribe was exiled because of him, but he didn't know what this meant. Perhaps he had his own difficulties in the past. After a long time, Nietian became cold, but in his heart, he was somewhat disappointed. The war was over. Those who should leave, and those who shouldn't had all left. "Rushi, believe me, our family will definitely be reunited." At this moment, Nietian missed Emo, Rushi, and their child the most. He didn't even have time to think of a name for his child. From this day forth, the Juying Shrine no longer exists. At this time, Nietian looked down at the Juying Shrine below. His eyes suddenly darkened, and then he directly slashed out with his sword. Monstrous sword shadows fell like a sweet potato. Rumble! In the next moment, the sword shadows fell, and the Juying Shrine collapsed. The ground stirred up a layer of turbid waves that were dozens of meters high. The Juying Shrine, which had been flourishing for a time in the myriad territories, was now flattened. As for the small fries of the Juying Shrine, they would be left for the other forces to take care of. Nietian felt that the Rakshasa temple would be happy to clean up the mess for him. Back then, the temple lord of the Rakshasa temple had promised him that as long as he opened the holy demon book for the Rakshasa tribe, the Rakshasa temple would follow his lead. Next, Nietian didn't stay and directly left. Half a day later, Nietian's figure appeared outside Heaven Punishment City. In the distance, he saw a group of people standing at the gate of Heaven Punishment City, as if they were anxiously waiting for someone. Fatty. Nietian's eyes narrowed. He immediately saw that the group of people at the gate were all figures he was most familiar with. One of them was Jean de Bayo. Standing behind Jean de Bayo were the faces that Nietian was most familiar with. They were none other than the disciples he had taken in when he had been in the other planes. Zhang Yifeng, Duan Mulu, Yang Zixiao, Han Tian, Peng Xiongfei, and the other disciples were all there. When Nietian saw these faces, he suddenly thought of the things that had happened in the plane world. Suddenly, he felt as if he had been separated from the world by a lifetime. After experiencing so much, he couldn't help but feel incomparably warm to be able to see these people who had once been by his side again. Coincidentally, he could bring some people with him into the saints' world this time. Then, Nietian's figure moved, and he came to the side of the crowd. "Boss, you're back." Jean de Bayo and the others saw Nietian and came forward one after another, overjoyed. Nietian was also happy, but in the next moment, he suddenly felt a murderous aura in the crowd. Raging flames Jiufeng. He suddenly turned around and locked his eyes on a familiar figure. He called out the other's name. This figure was none other than the evil body of the heaven-punishing demon, Heart Three Bodies. Raging Flames Jiufeng. Chapter 3461. Lian Jiufeng. Lian Jiufeng. Nye Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he saw the man's face. He actually didn't notice that this guy was here. Boss. Jean de Bao saw Nye Tian's expression and immediately stepped forward. He said, "This guy came to find you. I told him to wait, but he insisted on coming." "It's fine." Nye Tian smiled faintly and looked at Lian Jiufeng. He asked directly, "Lian Jiufeng, what business do you have with me?" "Nye Tian, let's find a place to talk." Lian Jiufeng's eyes were murderous, and his expression was ugly. "What do you mean a place to talk? Can't we talk here?" Jean de Bao looked impatiently at Lian Jiufeng and shouted. With his current strength, he could kill Lian Jiufeng with a wave of his hand in Heaven Executioner City. However, Lian Jiufeng had come to find Nye Tian, so he didn't do anything. "Fatty, you guys go back first. I'll be back soon." Nye Tian waved his hand and said with a faint smile. Jean de Bao frowned. He knew that Nye Tian had something to do, so he didn't say anything. Jean de Bao and the others returned to Heaven Executioner City first. Nye Tian left with Lian Jiufeng. A while later, Nye Tian and Lian Jiufeng arrived at a secret place outside Heaven Executioner City. "Lian Jiufeng, what business do you have?" Nye Tian frowned. He could feel that Lian Jiufeng was a little panicked. "Lord Nether Emperor, something happened." Lian Jiufeng frowned and said, Nye Tian's eyes focused, and his expression changed. He hadn't thought that Lian Jiufeng would come to find him because something happened to the Nether Emperor. Eyebrows furrowed, Nye Tian said in a low voice, "Make yourself clear." He did not care about the life or death of the Emperor of the Netherworld, but the relationship between the Emperor of the Netherworld and Cher was extraordinary. Moreover, only the Emperor of the Netherworld could restore Cher's sealed memories. Back then, after Tian had helped the Emperor of the Netherworld to awaken, he had made a promise with the latter that 3 years later, Cher would use the tear of the princess to find the Emperor of the Netherworld. But now, if something happened to the Emperor of the Underworld, Cher might never recover her memory. Half a month ago, the Emperor of the Underworld was captured by a mysterious person. Lian Jiufeng's expression was dark and ugly. He said, 7 kills and I searched for half a month, and we finally found this at the place where Lord Emperor of the Underworld's aura disappeared. A black stone appeared in Lian Jiufeng's hand. It looked no different from an ordinary stone, but it was as black as night. It gave off an eerie feeling. The Netherworld Emperor was captured. Nye Tian's expression changed when he heard Lian Jiufeng's story. He had never imagined that things would turn out like this. The Emperor of the Netherworld was definitely a peak expert in the myriad realms. Moreover, he had merged with the demon hearts of the heavens, and he had made a breakthrough after his awakening. His current strength should be about the same as the boundless ghost desolate. Just who could have captured the Emperor of the Netherworld? I've studied this black stone for a very long time, but I did not find anything strange about it. Lian Jiufeng frowned and handed the black stone to Nye Tian. Nye Tian accepted the black stone and frowned slightly. He probed it with his consciousness. Boom! However, in the next moment, an extremely powerful psychic attack was unleashed from within the black stone, causing Nye Tian's entire divine sense to tremble. In just an instant, beads of sweat appeared on Nye Tian's forehead. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. Nye Tian. Lian Jiufeng's eyes focused when he saw this. His expression changed. Nye Tian withdrew his consciousness and inhaled sharply. His complexion was a little pale. It took him a long time to recover. In that instant, he had been attacked by a powerful mental attack. His consciousness had almost collapsed. It's a mental barrier. The Ghost Emperor's voice rang out at this time. He couldn't help but exclaim, "A psychic ward?" Nye Tian was taken aback for a moment, and his face immediately darkened. His consciousness was connected to the Eternal Night Foxes, so it was extremely resistant to mental attacks. However, the mental attack from the Black Stone was so powerful that it had almost collapsed his consciousness. Nye Tian, what did you discover? Lian Jiufeng looked at Nietian. He didn't know what had happened, so he couldn't help but ask. A mental attack. Nietian frowned and said solemnly. A mental attack. Lian Jiufeng was stunned. His expression darkened, and he said in shock, I tried to sense the black stone earlier, but why didn't I feel a mental attack? Nietian's eyes focused, and he said solemnly, because your mental power is not enough. The psychic boundary within the black stone would only release a psychic attack when it sensed a sufficiently strong psychic power. Lian Jiufeng's mental power was not strong enough. It was not enough to trigger a mental attack. Then what did you sense? Lian Jiufeng frowned and asked solemnly. I didn't sense anything. Nietian shook his head with an ugly expression. The mental barrier on the black stone was too powerful. He did not have enough strength to sense what was inside the black stone at all. Nietian was very confused. Just what was this black stone? Why did it have such a terrifying mental barrier? Nietian, this black stone is definitely not from a realm. The Ghost Emperor's voice rang out at this time. Not from a realm. Nietian was stunned. Then he thought of something and his eyes trembled. He said, Is this something left behind by a Saint World Martial practitioner? Yes. The Ghost Emperor nodded heavily. The mental barrier inside this black stone is extremely powerful. There can't be such a terrifying barrier master in a realm. You're saying that the person who captured the Netherworld Emperor is a Saint World Martial practitioner? Nietian immediately reacted. His expression changed slightly, and he said solemnly, It must be. The Ghost Emperor nodded and said, This emperor is guessing that this black stone is hiding a great secret. Nietian's expression was dark. He did not say anything for a long time. It seemed that the reason behind the Netherworld Emperor's capture was not simple. Nietian, do you know something? Lian Jiufeng couldn't help but ask when he saw Nietian's expression change again and again. Lian Jiufeng, I think that the person who captured the Netherworld Emperor is someone from the Saint World. Nietian did not hide anything and said directly, Someone from the Saint World? Lian Jiufeng's eyes narrowed, and his expression changed. He said, Why was the Netherworld Emperor captured by someone from the Saint World? Nietian did not say anything. He only sighed and said, It's not easy to save the Netherworld Emperor. Back when Heaven's Choice was at its end, Nietian encountered a Heaven's Choice venerable who looked exactly like Cher. This meant that Cher was related to someone from the Saint World. Similarly, it would not be strange if the Netherworld Emperor was related to someone from the Saint World. Chapter 3462. 3 days later. What did you say? Nietian's eyes shook when he heard Lian Jiufeng's words. He cried out in shock. Lord Hell Emperor became a saint half a month ago, Lian Jiufeng said after a moment of hesitation. This was supposed to be the Hell Emperor's secret, but there was no need to hide it now. Nietian's pupils shrank in astonishment. Domain Ascension. He had never imagined that the Hell Emperor had become a saint in a realm. A cultivator who became a saint in a realm would resonate with the world. The disturbance could even pass through the realm and affect the surrounding saint worlds to a certain extent. It made sense if the Hell Emperor had been captured because he had become a saint in a realm and attracted the attention of the saint world. But if that was the case, he should have been recruited instead of being forced. He should have told Lian Jiufeng and Qisha about it. Nietian's eyes flashed with cold light. Nietian, you seem to have the same aura as Lord Hell Emperor. Have you become a saint as well? Lian Jiufeng looked at Nietian in surprise and asked. As a matter of fact, he had already sensed an unusual aura from Nietian, but he hadn't been able to confirm it. Now that he heard Nietian say that he had become a saint in a realm, he immediately realized what was going on. Amen. Nietian nodded slightly and didn't say anything. Lian Jiufeng's eyes shook. He froze in place and couldn't say anything for a long time. He never dreamed that Nietian had become a saint in a realm. The reason why the Hell Emperor had been able to become a saint realm expert was because he had gained a deeper understanding of the heaven-punishing devil heart and had absorbed more power from it. But why had Nietian become a saint in a realm? Was Nietian's talent really that great? Lian Jiufeng, if we want to save the Hell Emperor, we'll have to go to the Saint World, Nietian said solemnly, ignoring Lai Yin Jiufeng's surprise. Emit, Lai Yin Jiufeng was surprised for a moment, but he immediately reacted and nodded heavily. As long as he could save the Underworld Emperor, he was willing to go anywhere. Go find 7 kills. I still have some matters to attend to. We'll meet here in 3 days. Nie Tian looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng and said directly. Lai Yin Jiufeng actually bowed slightly to Nie Tian and said, Nie Tian, as long as you can save the Emperor of the Netherworld, I will definitely beg the Emperor of the Netherworld to restore Cher's memories and set Cher free. Nie Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything. The Emperor of the Underworld was not as simple as Lai Yin Jiufeng thought. Lai Yin Jiufeng left immediately after that. Nie Tian also left for Heaven Execution City. After a while, Nie Tian returned to Tianxing City and went straight to the main hall of the Myriad Domains Guild headquarters. Boss, you're back. Jean de Bayo and the others were already waiting for Nie Tian outside the main hall. They were overjoyed to see Nie Tian appear. Nie Tian entered the main hall and had Jean de Bayo and the others take a seat. Duanmu boy, haven't you always wanted to see boss? Hurry up. Jean de Bayo smiled as he looked at Duanmu Lu and the others. Disciple Duanmu Lu greets teacher. Duanmu Lu seemed a little unfamiliar when he saw Nie Tian again. He took a step forward and knelt on the ground respectfully. Disciple Yang Zixiao greets teacher. Disciple Han Tian greets teacher. Disciple Peng Xiongfei greets teacher. Then, the others all knelt and showed great respect to Nie Tian. Get up. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth curled up. He smiled faintly and said, A martial artist's knees are like gold. We are master and disciple. When you were acknowledging me as your master, you already knelt. In the future, you don't have to kneel when you see me. Yes, Duanmu Lu and the others stood up, but they all lowered their heads. They didn't even dare to lift their heads to look at Nie Tian. The current Nie Tian was already too strong, far beyond their imagination. Duanmu, am I that scary? You don't even dare to lift your head to look at me. Nie Tian couldn't help but laugh bitterly and said half-jokingly, Disciple doesn't dare. Duanmu Lu was quite frightened and hurriedly said, Duanmu, you guys are too reserved. I'm still the original Nie Tian. I am your teacher and also your friend. In front of me, you guys are the same as before. Nie Tian looked helpless. It seemed that his strength was too strong, and Duanmu Lu and the others were even more unfamiliar with him. Then, they chatted for a while, and the atmosphere eased a little. Over the next 2 days, Nie Tian stayed with Jean de Bayo and the others and took care of some matters at the same time. He sent Bailey Xingxue to inform the Rakshasa Temple of the 10 directions that the remnants of the Juying Divine Palace would be taken care of. Nie Tian arranged for the Nie family to live in Heaven Execution City, where Jean de Bayo was looking after them. It was the safest place. Nie Tian would soon leave the Realmverse. He was thinking about who to bring to the Holy World. At this time, in a small courtyard, 3 figures were sitting in a gazebo. These 3 figures were Nie Fenghua, Chiwu Yunxiu, and Nie Tian's family of 3. Ha ha ha! How can they suppress my Nie Fenghua's son? Nie Fenghua laughed heartily. Back then, Calamity 9 deities forced me to leave the 9 realms and sent Nie Tian to the Realmverse. So what now? My son has become a sage in the Realmverse. But what about Calamity 9 deities? She's already turned to dust. Nie Tian looked at the smug Nie Fenghua and couldn't help but shake his head. Father, Calamity 9 deities is in the past. There's no need to bring it up again. That's right. Chiwu Yunxiu covered her mouth and laughed. Nie Tian killed Calamity 9 deities, not you. Why are you so smug? Nie Tian is my son. Isn't it only right for him to avenge his father? Why can't I be smug? Nie Fenghua raised an eyebrow. Didn't Nie Tian kill Calamity 9 deities because you were useless and couldn't kill him? Chiwu Yunxiu's pretty face darkened. She looked like she was about to get angry. My dear wife, please calm down. I'm useless. I've caused you and Nie Tian to suffer. Nie Fenghua hurriedly apologized with a smile. Nie Tian smiled happily when he saw this. The past few days had been one of the few peaceful days of his life. However, it was a pity that such peace would soon be gone. Next, he would embark on a new journey. At this moment, Nietian became much more serious and asked in a deep voice, "Father, Mother, are you really not coming with me to the Saint's world?" He had planned to bring Nie Fenghua and Chiwu Yunxiu with him to the sacred realm this time, but the two of them didn't want to go. Nietian, the sacred realm is too dangerous. It's not suitable for old people like us. It's better for you to go alone. Nie Fenghua looked at Nietian and said with a smile. Nietian was speechless. Nie Fenghua was only a few tens of thousands of years old. She was considered very young among the godly state martial artists. Nietian, you should go to the sacred realm. We won't be going. Chiwu Yunxiu also said with a smile. Nietian fell silent for a while before he finally nodded. Of course, he knew that Nie Fenghua and Chiwu Yunxiu didn't want to go to the sacred realm because they didn't want to be a burden to him. Nietian didn't force them. After chatting with Nie Fenghua and Chiwu Yunxiu for a while, he returned to his room. Nietian has lived a tough life. Chiwu Yunxiu looked at Nietian's back as tears welled up in her eyes. She still remembered how Nietian would rather die than give up to save her. Although Nietian was powerful, he had never had peace in his life. Chapter 3463. Awakening of Lifeline. Nietian sat cross-legged in his room. He was leaving the Myriad Regions tomorrow. Today was his last day of cultivation in the Myriad Regions. He looked inside his body and checked his martial body. At this moment, his martial cultivation had reached the first level of heavenly rhythm. He was a true holy disciple. The increase in his martial cultivation had allowed his 9 extreme war god art to break through to the extreme fire scarlet heaven realm. His sword Dao realm had not broken through. It was still at the transcending god profundity realm. This was a rare situation where his sword Dao realm was weaker than his martial Dao realm. 1,000 of the 9,000 god fiend powers in his body had been awakened. As for his 2 eyes, the demon eye and the god punishment rebel, the demon eye could release an extreme demon extermination seal after it was opened. Currently, the god punishment rebel could release a powerful eye power to break through his martial body and allow him to enter the god fiend body state. However, his greatest trump card, the 9 extreme chaos beast, had been sealed once again. What's more, ever since he had used the 9 extreme chaos beast the last time, it had returned to the primal chaos origin coffin, and the seal had become even stronger. Even if Nietian and the ghost of the arch worked together, they would not be able to break the seal. In other words, even if Nietian wanted to use the 9 extreme chaos beast now, it would be impossible. At that moment, Nietian discovered something strange. His expression flickered, and he exclaimed, "The 3,900 karma points are gone." He realized that the 3,509 mysterious karma that he had absorbed in the 9 mysterious blood spring had strangely disappeared. Back then, Nietian had killed the sect master of the 9 profound blood spring in 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 the 9 profound blood spring. He remembered very clearly that 3,509 mysterious karma had turned into runes and attached to his 9 energy meridians. Moreover, it was because he had absorbed 3,509 mysterious karma that Nietian had broken through to the 9th level pseudo-sage. After that, he had integrated the power of the 9 mysterious karma into his sword intent, making it even more terrifying. But at this moment, he saw that the runes formed from 3,900 karma on the 9 meridians had disappeared. How is this possible? Nietian cried out in shock. He couldn't help but frown, and his face froze. Strange. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded. He was also very confused. What's going on? Nietian was stunned for a long time. He carefully sensed the 9 vital meridians, but he still couldn't find 3,009 profound karma. It's the lifeline. Just as Nietian and the Ghost Emperor were feeling confused, Lulu suddenly let out a cry of surprise. He seemed extremely nervous and even a little excited. Lifeline. Nietian went blank for a moment, his face filled with astonishment. He had never heard of such a thing before. Lifeline? Could it be? At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's expression changed, and he was unable to say anything for a long time. Could it be what? Tian was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. What exactly happened to make Lulu and the Ghost Emperor so surprised? Tian, you've awakened the lifeline. After a long time, the Ghost Emperor finally calmed down and said in a deep voice. His eyes were burning with excitement. Lifeline? What's that? Tian was flabbergasted once again. He had never heard of something like a lifeline. Tian, do you remember the prince of the Fei Tian Azura tribe called Fei Tian Lang? The Ghost Emperor's lips curled into a strange smile as he suddenly asked. Not serious, Chun? Tian couldn't help but furrow his brows when he heard this name. In the Azura tribe's ancestral ground, in the Saint Demon's secret realm, he met a cultivator who had one of the 9 heaven-defying fates, the Fei Tian Lang. And this person had once released a very strange power, the Fei Tian Lang's destiny. At this moment, Tian suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed as he exclaimed, Don't tell me, it's my martial Dao fate? He remembered that the Ghost Emperor said that the life pattern was the power cultivated by the martial destiny, and was extremely terrifying. At that time, Tang 13 almost died at the hands of Fei Tian Lang. Yes, the Ghost Emperor nodded and said, Tian, your martial destiny has automatically awakened the lifeline. What do you mean? Tian went blank for a moment, still very confused. Tian, a martial artist has 2 destiny. The martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path represent a martial artist's great talent. The Ghost Emperor said with a serious expression, All martial artists who have the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path are extremely talented. However, not many people know that the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path are actually a very special kind of bloodline power. Moreover, it is a bloodline power that is different from normal martial arts. Tian's face was filled with confusion as he listened on. He could understand that the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path were the power of bloodline. But what did it mean when it was different from normal martial arts? Tian, let me ask you, what is the foundation of a martial artist cultivation? At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's eyes flickered with a strange light as he suddenly asked. The Yuan Meridian. Tian answered without hesitation. The Yuan Meridian was the foundation of a martial artist cultivation. It didn't matter if a martial artist was in the spirit realm, godly realm, or sage realm. As long as their Yuan Meridian was destroyed, their martial arts would be over. Just like Lu Mu in the Sky Sword technique, his Yuan Meridian was destroyed by the heart of the sky, and he became a cripple. Very right. The foundation of a martial artist cultivation is the Yuan Meridian. The Ghost Emperor nodded heavily. Then he smiled strangely and said, However, the power of the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path are not restricted by the Yuan Meridian. They exist in a martial artist's body independently of the Yuan Meridian. This, Tian frowned when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. He was stunned. He did not expect that there was a power of bloodline that did not rely on the Yuan Meridian. Tian, your martial Dao Fate Providence is one of the 9 heaven-defying Fate Providence. It is an extremely powerful martial Dao Fate Providence. The Ghost Emperor smiled faintly and continued, I originally planned on telling you about the fate of the martial way after you entered the Saint's world. But now, it seems like I have to tell you in advance. Tian nodded. Yeah, everything the Ghost Emperor had said made him more and more excited. Even if he did not understand it, he could tell that the lifeline the Ghost Emperor was talking about was an extremely powerful power. Tian, not long ago, one of your cultivation meridians automatically awakened in your martial path. The Ghost Emperor nodded slightly and said, It was this lifeline that devoured 3,009 Xian karma. Tian's eyes flickered when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. A lifeline could devour 3,009 Xian karma? That was too terrifying. 3,009 Xian karma was condensed from the blood chi of 30 million souls and the 9 Xian forbidden force. Its power was unimaginable. How could a lifeline devour 3009 Shin Karma. Chapter 3464. 3459. Life Horoscope Cultivation. Upon hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nye Tian was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe it. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor laughed, his eyes lighting up as he hastily said, Nye Tian, do you see if there's another dimension inside of you other than the one in your spiritual vein? Nye Tian forced himself to calm down and began to sense his martial physique. A while later, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. At the same time, his expression became more and more shocked, until he was completely dumbfounded like a piece of wood. He had really discovered another space. Apart from the Yuan Meridian, there was another space in his martial physique. Nye Tian would never believe it if he had not verified it himself. Nye Tian, take a closer look at what's inside the Life Meridian space, the Ghost Emperor said proudly. Nye Tian finally calmed down after a while. He nodded slightly and continued to sense the new space in the Life Meridian. This is... After a moment, his eyes trembled, and he was stunned once more. He really saw something similar to a Yuan Meridian in the Life Meridian space. The White Life Meridian was like a tiny white snake floating in the Life Meridian space. Although it was not big, it was emitting a strong aura of life. Nye Tian, this is your Life Meridian. A moment later, the Ghost Emperor waited for Nye Tian to calm down before saying, the Life Meridian that awakened your martial horoscope. Nye Tian gulped down a mouthful of saliva. It took him a long time to calm down. He took a deep breath and sensed the White Life Meridian. As expected, he could sense the aura of the 9 mysterious karma in it. However, the aura of the 9 mysterious karma was very weak, as if it would disappear at any time. As the Ghost Emperor had said, the Life Meridian had devoured 3,009 mysterious karma. It was as if the 3,009 mysterious karma had become the nutrients for the Life Meridian. Nye Tian sucked in a breath of cold air, his face ghastly pale. This is way too terrifying. That was 3,009 mysterious karma, but it was actually absorbed by such a small life vein. It was too shocking. What kind of terrifying power was contained in this lifeline? Nye Tian, the 3,900 Shin karma, was indeed absorbed by the Life Meridian, but most of the energy was used by the Life Meridian to open the Life Meridian space. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor seemed to see through Nye Tian's doubts. Ghost Emperor, when did this lifeline appear? Why did it appear? Nye Tian calmed down a little and asked with a trembling voice. Even you don't know. So how would I know? The Ghost Emperor laughed and asked Nye Tian. Nye Tian was taken aback and didn't know what to say. Generally speaking, the cultivation of a martial Tao life chart is extremely difficult. Even martial artists who cultivate a life formula rarely awaken their life meridians. Following that, the Ghost Arch became much more serious and said, it's really rare for a martial Tao life providence to automatically awaken like you. The Ghost Arch really had no idea why Nye Tian would suddenly awaken his life meridian. If he really had to find a reason, it could only be that Nye Tian's martial Tao life providence was too powerful, so powerful that he could awaken it without cultivating. Ghost Emperor, what use is this life meridian to me now? Nye Tian asked calmly while sensing the aura of the life meridian. Currently, it's useless. The Ghost Arch was startled for a moment before he replied with a smile. It didn't work? Nye Tian was taken aback, and his eyes widened. Absorbing 3,009 mysterious karma to awaken a life meridian is useless? Isn't this a joke? Originally, Nye Tian could still use the 3,009 mysterious karma. However, after awakening the life meridian, the 3,009 mysterious karma would be gone. Wouldn't it mean that his combat power would decrease instead of increasing? Then what do I need this life meridian for? Nye Tian frowned, and his expression turned ugly. Nye Tian, don't worry. The Ghost Arch said calmly, the cultivation of martial Tao life providence has always been very difficult. It's great that you can awaken a life meridian. But the awakening of a life meridian is only the beginning of the cultivation of martial Tao life providence. It's equivalent to the awakening of a martial artist's Yuan meridian. However, a life meridian is different from a Yuan meridian. All martial artists, except for the extremely special ones, basically have 9 Yuan meridians. However, every martial artist who cultivates martial Tao life providence has a different number of life meridians. Generally speaking, the stronger the martial Tao life providence, the more life meridians you can awaken. Basically, a life meridian is useless to a martial artist in the early stages. However, in the later stages, the life meridian will become stronger and stronger. It will have a qualitative change to a martial artist's martial body, life force, and combat power. Just like that guy called Fei Tianlang. If he didn't have the non-heavenly fate pattern, his combat power would be at least half. Nie Tian's expression softened after hearing the ghost Thearka's explanation. He then asked, "What are life patterns?" The cultivation of martial Tao life providence is also divided into realms. The first 3 realms are life meridian, life pattern, and life intent. The ghost Tharch smiled and said, "But you're still at the early stage of life meridian, so you don't need to care about life patterns." Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. So life pattern was the realm above life meridian. No wonder Fei Tianlang's strength increased so much after using the life pattern. I wonder when I'll be able to reach the realm of life patterns. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth curled up into a faint smile. You should finish awakening your life meridians first. The ghost Tharch smiled and said. Nie Tian's eyes trembled and became extremely passionate. He asked, "Ghost Tharch, you just said that the stronger the martial Tao life providence, the more life meridians I can awaken. How many life meridians do you think I can awaken?" 9? 9? The ghost Tharch frowned and let out a strange cry. "Is that too many?" Nie Tian's face stiffened for a moment. Then he laughed and said, "Then 6 it is. Kid, do you know how many life meridians Prince Fei Tian, who has won the 9 heaven-defying fate providence, has only awakened?" The ghost Tharch was speechless and asked in a cold tone. Since it's one of the 9 heaven-defying fate providence, he should have awakened quite a few life meridians, right? Nie Tian frowned and said with a dry smile. 2. The ghost emperor said coldly before he could finish his sentence. 2. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and couldn't help but let out a strange cry. He didn't think that Fei Tianlang, who had the falsified fate providence, would only awaken 2 life meridians. Nie Tian, it's already very late for you to awaken life meridians at your age. Also, life meridians awaken at the same time. You've only awakened 1 life meridian, and that's probably the only life meridian you've awakened. The ghost Tharch grinned and said, "Ugh." Nie Tian was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. It seemed like he was too optimistic about his martial Tao life providence. 1 life meridian, the only one. After half a day, Nie Tian let out a wry smile. He sensed the space of his life meridians and suddenly discovered something. His face instantly froze. Chapter 3465. Nie Tian stared at one of the lifeline veins in the lifeline space. His expression changed, and he exclaimed in shock, "How is this possible?" He simply couldn't believe his eyes. The lifeline in the lifeline space actually trembled for a moment and split into 2. Furthermore, the 2 lifelines were exactly the same. It was like a duplication. 1 lifeline was duplicated into 2 lifelines. Didn't this mean that Nie Tian had 2 lifelines? Nie Tian, are you all right? Ghost Emperor noticed Nie Tian's strange expression and asked with a frown. He didn't pay attention to Nie Tian's lifeline space, so he didn't know what was going on. Ghost Emperor. Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he forced himself to calm down. He wanted to say something, but his eyes trembled again, and he couldn't say anything, because he saw that one of the 2 lifelines moved again, and then split into 2. Once again, Nie Tian saw 3 lifelines. 3 lifelines. It really was 3 lifelines. Nie Tian's eyes were blank. He felt his brain buzzing as if it was suddenly empty. He only remembered that Ghost Emperor said that Chun Chun, who had the non-heavenly fate, only had 2 lifelines. But now he actually had 3 lifelines. Nye Tian, are you crazy? Ghost Emperor frowned when he saw Nye Tian in a daze and didn't speak for a long time. However, Nye Tian's eyes were staring at the 3 lifelines. The shock in his heart was getting greater and greater. He had a hunch that there might be more than 3 lifelines in his lifeline space. Following that, an even more shocking scene happened. One of the lifelines suddenly trembled a few times. Then, more lifelines appeared one after another. Nye Tian's face stiffened. His mouth was wide open as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. He saw that in the blink of an eye, 9 life veins had appeared in his life vein space. 9 lifelines. A total of 9 lifelines. Ghost Emperor frowned as he realized that something was wrong. He immediately looked at Nye Tian's lifeline space. In the next moment, his illusory face froze and was instantly petrified. He couldn't believe his eyes. What did he just see? 9 life meridians. 9 life meridians appeared in Nye Tian's life meridian space. Ghost Emperor was dumbfounded and couldn't react for a long time. Ghost Emperor, did I just see 9 lifelines? At this moment, Nye Tian finally calmed down a little. His voice trembled as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He felt like he was dreaming, as if everything was unreal. The Ghost Emperor finally came to his senses and nodded subconsciously. His eyes were still staring at the 9 life veins, as if he was afraid that they would disappear in the next moment. He didn't expect Nye Tian to awaken 9 lifelines. But how is that possible? Nye Tian's celestial demon forbid fate was indeed powerful, but wasn't powerful enough to awaken 9 lifelines. Moreover, Nye Tian was already very old. It was already a miracle for him to awaken 1 lifeline at his age. Cultivators in the realms didn't know about martial path fate horoscopes and heavenly path soul horoscopes. Only cultivators in the sacred world knew about these things. As for cultivators in the sacred world, as long as they cultivated martial path fate horoscopes and heavenly path soul horoscopes, they would start cultivating from a young age. The fact that Nye Tian had awakened 9 life meridians at the same time after he had broken through into the Saint Realm was simply too bizarre. Ghost Emperor had underestimated Nye Tian by guessing that he could only awaken 1 lifeline. Nye Tian pursed his lips and asked cautiously, Ghost Emperor, I've awakened 9 life meridians. Among all the martial artists who cultivate the martial Tao, I should be considered very powerful, right? Ghost Emperor nodded, but didn't say anything. 9 lifelines wasn't just very powerful, it was infinitely powerful. Ghost Emperor had lived for millions of years. He had met countless cultivators who cultivated martial path fate horoscopes, but even the most talented cultivator had only awakened 3 lifelines. People like Nye Tian, who had awakened 9 life meridians, were extremely rare in this world. Even now, the Ghost Emperor still felt very illusory, as if everything was fake. 9 lifelines wasn't just heaven-defying, it was practically defying the gods, demons, and saints. Ghost Emperor vaguely felt that there was an even greater power hidden in Nye Tian's body. It was just that this power hadn't been revealed yet. Otherwise, Nye Tian wouldn't have been able to awaken 9 lifelines. Ghost Emperor, 9 lifelines should be my limit. I won't be able to awaken any more lifelines, right? Nye Tian said with a smile after sensing the space of his lifelines for a long time and seeing that his 9 lifelines had stabilized. Ghost Emperor had said that the awakening of lifelines usually happened at the same time. It was likely that Nye Tian wouldn't be able to awaken any more lifelines in the future. Kid, 9 lifelines isn't your limit. It's the limit of all cultivators I've seen. Ghost Emperor frowned. You want to come out and beat Nye Tian up? Since ancient times, no one has ever awakened 9 lifelines. Is that so? Nye Tian chuckled, the corners of his mouth curling up into a complacent smile. Ghost Emperor rolled his eyes. He calmed down and said, Nye Tian, what you need the most now is a fate chant to cultivate your lifelines. It would be a waste if you don't have a good one for your 9 lifelines. Life incantations? Nye Tian was taken aback. Fate chants are used to cultivate your lifelines, just like how martial skills are used to cultivate the martial path. Ghost Emperor explained briefly. Your lifelines are powerful, and you've awakened 9 lifelines. You need a saint-ranked fate chant to cultivate it. Otherwise, it'll be hard for your lifelines to become stronger. Saint-ranked fate chant. Nietion frowned. He guessed that it was a high-ranked fate chant. However, he didn't know if it was easy to obtain a saint-ranked fate chant. There won't be any fate chant in the realm. Ghost Emperor shook his head. The best time to fuse your fate chant is within 9 days of awakening your lifelines. We need to head to the sacred world immediately to see if we can find a suitable fate chant. Yes, Nietion nodded. His eyes shone with passion. The awakening of 9 lifelines made him feel as though a whole new world had opened up to him. He still had a long way to go on the martial path. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor was lost in thought, a grim expression on his face. Nietion, what kind of power do you have inside of you? He thought that he had a good understanding of Nietion after living in Nietion's body for so long. However, he suddenly felt that there were still many secrets about Nietion that he had yet to understand. Why was there a 9th-level chaos beast in Nietion's body? Why could Nietion awaken 9 lifelines? Chapter 3466. Heart-devouring Blackstone. Ghost Emperor couldn't figure out what kind of power could make Nietion's fate so terrifying. There was no point in thinking too much about it. Once Nietion's fate reached the Destiny realm, everything would be solved. Right now, what Nietion needed the most was a Saint-class fate art. If Nietion's martial Dao fate matured, it was impossible to imagine how great he would become in the future. A day later, Nietion stood outside Executioner City. Next to him were 4 of his disciples, Duanmu Lu, Yang Zixiao, Han Tian, and Peng Xiongfei. He planned to take all 4 of them with him on his trip to the Holy World. The 4 of them were very young and talented, so it wasn't too late for them to enter the Holy World. Their strength had increased by leaps and bounds after reaching the God Realm. Duanmu Lu was a peak paramount god, and Yang Zixiao, Han Tian, and Han Tian were overgods. Their strength was heaven-defying among cultivators of the same age. The only reason why they were as strong as they were now was because of Nietion's help. Nietion had extracted a large amount of holy qi from the 9 supernaturals, and then personally helped Duanmu Lu and the others absorb it. That was how their strength had improved to such a level. Even so, they were far weaker than Nietion. Nietion planned to find a way to help Duanmu Lu and the others improve their strength after entering the Holy World. His disciples were talented, but since they were born in a realm verse, they needed to get stronger as quickly as possible. Only then could they compete with the geniuses of the Holy World. Are we leaving now, Master? Duanmu Lu looked at Executioner City reluctantly. His wife was in Executioner City, and he didn't know when she'd return. Yes, let's go. Nietion nodded. He didn't want anyone to see him off, so he wouldn't feel sad. After that, Nietion arrived at the place he had agreed to meet Lian Jiufeng. Nietion. Soon, Lian Jiufeng appeared. There was another figure beside him. It was 7 kills. Let's go. Nietion didn't say anything else and prepared to set off immediately. However, at that moment, 7 kills was looking at Duanmu Lu and the others with a dark and cold expression as he asked, "Who are they?" "They're my disciples. They're entering the saints' world with us." Nietion frowned and said indifferently. Together, 7 kills' eyes suddenly turned cold. He said, "We're going to the saints' world. Why are we taking a few pieces of trash with us?" Right now, Lian Jiufeng and Qi Sha were rank 9 pseudo-saint. It was only natural that they looked down on Duanmu Lu and the others. Boom! As soon as 7 kills finished speaking, Nietion took a step forward. His aura surged out madly and erupted with terrifying power, knocking 7 kills back several dozen meters. Nietion, what is the meaning of this? 7 kills barely managed to stabilize himself. His face was flushed red, and his eyes shone with cold, killing intent as he growled. He never thought that Nietion would dare to attack him directly. "Listen up, 7 kills. Nyetian stared cold at 7 kills with a dark gaze. He said, I'm the one who's taking you to the saint's world, and you're the one who's begging me. It's my business who I want to bring with me. It's not your place to interfere. You. 7 kills' eyes trembled. He felt as if a boulder was pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. Before, he had heard from Lian Jiofeng that Nyetian had become a saint ruler, but he didn't believe it. But now, Nyetian's aura alone was enough to make him lose his footing. The truth was right before him. He had no choice but to believe it. Moreover, Nyetian's current forcefulness had exceeded his expectations. Lian Jiofeng, 7 kills. If you want to save the Onyx Emperor, then listen to me. Nyetian's eyes were cold. He glanced at Lian Jiofeng and 7 kills in a domineering manner. 7 kills' expression was dark. He wanted to say something, but Lian Jiofeng stopped him. Lian Jiofeng was a smart man. He knew that he could not fall out with Nyetian right now. Let's go. Nyetian turned around and left without saying anything more. 7 kills was reluctant, but he could only hold it in. Afterwards, Nyetian and the others did not enter the saint's world directly. Instead, they went to the Sky Kendo first. He knew nothing about the saint's world, so it was better to go to the Sky Kendo first and learn about it from Zhong Mingyu and the others. Half a day later, Nyetian and the others appeared in the Sky Kendo. He did not waste any time and went to find Zhong Mingyu. Nyetian. Zhong Mingyu was very happy to see Nyetian again, but when he sensed Nyetian's aura in the next moment, his face froze. Nyetian, you become a sage. Zhong Mingyu said with a trembling voice after being stunned for a dozen or so seconds. He knew that Nyetian was talented, but he had not imagined that Nyetian was strong enough to become a sage. The absolute Eagle King, who was next to Zhong Mingyu, had a frozen expression on his face. He was clearly shocked. Only now did Absolute Eagle King truly understand how talented Nyetian was. Yes, Nyetian nodded with a smile and an indifferent expression. He did not hide anything and simply explained what had happened. Teacher has appeared. Zhong Mingyu's eyes burned with excitement after hearing Nyetian's story. Even he hadn't seen Forefather Divine Heaven for a long time. He really did not think that Forefather Divine Heaven would appear in the saint's world for Nyetian. Nyetian nodded and did not say anything. Nyetian, are these your friends? After a while, Zhong Mingyu calmed down and swept his gaze across Lian Jiofeng and the others. Yes, Nyetian nodded and said, they will come with me to the saint's world. Zhong Mingyu frowned and couldn't help but look at 7 kills and Lian Jiofeng a few more times. He felt a powerful darkness aura from them. Senior Brother Zhong, I want to ask you about something. Nyetian did not waste words and said directly, yes. Zhong Mingyu nodded. Senior Brother Zhong, do you recognize this? Nyetian took out the strange black stone that Lian Jiofeng had given him and handed it to Zhong Mingyu. Zhong Mingyu's expression changed slightly as he accepted the black stone. After a moment of silence, he asked Nyetian, Nyetian, where did you get this? I have a friend who was kidnapped. This black stone was found at the place where he disappeared. Nyetian noticed the change in Zhong Mingyu's expression and frowned. He asked, Senior Brother Zhong, do you recognize this black stone? Zhong Mingyu's expression darkened slightly. After a moment of silence, he did not answer Nyetian. Instead, he asked, is there anything special about your friend? Not long ago, he became a sage in the saint's world. Nyetian nodded. He felt that Zhong Mingyu should know about the black stone. A sage in the saint's world. Zhong Mingyu's eyes shook violently when he heard these words. A small realm had produced 2 sage realm cultivators at the same time. It was too terrifying. In fact, it wasn't just 2 people who had become sage realm, but 3. Other than Nyetian and the Emperor of Hell, there was also Nyetian and Mo Rushi's child who had also become sage realm. Chapter 3467. Chapter 3462. Sacred World of 7 Cultivators, Heart-Devouring Blackstone. Nyetian's eyes trembled slightly when he heard Zhong Mingyu's words. Just by hearing this name, he could feel a strong dark aura. Then, Tian calmed down and said in a low voice, "Senior Marshal Brother Zhong, that captured friend of mine is very important to me. Please tell me everything you know." Zhong Mingyu frowned and shook his head. "I don't know much about the heart-devouring Blackstone. I only know that it belongs to a dark force. Moreover, that force is very mysterious and very few people have seen it. He stayed in the Sky Sword Marshal all year round and didn't know many things about the sacred world." Tian frowned and had a helpless expression. At this time, the Absolute Eagle King suddenly said, "Lord Zhong, can I take a look at the heart-devouring Blackstone?" Zhong Mingyu glanced at the Absolute Eagle King and handed over the heart-devouring Blackstone. "It really is the heart-devouring Blackstone." The Absolute Eagle King took the heart-devouring Blackstone and sensed it. His eyes flashed with a strange light. "Senior Absolute, you also know about the heart-devouring Blackstone?" Tian's eyes trembled, and he looked at the Absolute Eagle King with a fiery gaze. The Absolute Eagle King had lived for a very long time and had experienced far more things than Zhou Mingyu. Perhaps he had a better understanding of the heart-devouring Blackstone. "A few years ago, I met a cultivator in the sacred world of 7 cultivators. He had a heart-devouring Blackstone." The Absolute Eagle King's expression changed slightly, and his eyes became strange. He seemed to remember something and said, "At that time, I had a small conflict with him and almost died in his hands." Sacred world of 7 cultivators. Tian's eyes trembled. He looked at the Absolute Eagle King and asked, "Senior Absolute, there should be more than one sacred world in the sacred world, right?" Although he had never been to a sacred world, he had heard of it several times. The one he heard the most was the sacred world. He felt that the sacred world should be a general term for sacred worlds, just like the myriad domains. "Yes." The Absolute Eagle King nodded and said, "The sacred world is the general term for all sacred worlds. Of course, there is more than one sacred world. The entire all-heaven sacred world is like the myriad regions. It's a sacred world system that contains countless sacred worlds. Furthermore, just like the plane worlds, the holy worlds are also divided into different levels. From low to high, they are elementary holy worlds, intermediate holy worlds, advanced holy worlds, and peak holy worlds. Generally speaking, a realm system is connected to multiple holy worlds at the same time, and the holy worlds that are connected to the realms are usually elementary holy worlds." The Absolute Eagle King knew that Tian was unfamiliar with the sacred world, so he gave him an introduction. Tian nodded. This was basically the same as his previous guesses about the Saint's world. Like other planes and realms, the holy world was also divided into different levels. "Senior Absolute, the Saint's world should be very big. How big is a basic Saint's world?" Tian asked the Absolute Eagle King. "A holy world is much larger than a realm. Even a primary holy world is a few million miles wide. A primary holy world is even larger than a small realm system." Absolute Eagle King smiled faintly as he introduced it. "So big." Tian was surprised. He was quite shocked. He didn't expect the Saint's world to be so vast. A Saint world was actually comparable to a realm system. Then, Tian continued to ask, "Senior Absolute, what level is the 7th cultivator of true virtues, sacred world?" Absolute Eagle King nodded and said, "The 7th cultivator of true virtues, sacred world, is a basic saint world, and it's connected to the myriad regions." Tian nodded slightly, and a blazing light surged in his eyes. "Tian, are you going to the 7th cultivator of true virtues, sacred world?" Zhong Mingyu frowned slightly when he saw Tian's expression. Tian nodded and said, "Senior Brother Zhong, that friend of mine is very important to me. I must go and save him. Since the heart-devouring black stone once appeared in the 7th cultivator of true virtues sacred world, I must go and take a look." Zhong Mingyu looked at Tian and frowned. He paused for a moment before saying, "Tian, you can go to the 7th cultivator of true virtues sacred world, but your current identity is the master of the sky. You must go to the heavenly martial sacred world." Otherwise, I won't be able to explain it to the 5 major forces. Senior brother Zhong, give me some time. Nietion's eyes slightly narrowed as he said in a heavy tone. Zhong Mingyu thought for a moment and said, Nietion, I will give you 1 year. After 1 year, no matter what happens, you must come to the heavenly martial sacred world to find me. Nietion nodded. 1 year was enough for him. Next, Zhong Mingyu and Nietion talked for a while and gave him a lot of sword crystals. Senior brother Zhong, I will take my leave. Nietion no longer stayed and immediately prepared to go to the 7th cultivator of true virtue. Zhong Mingyu nodded and then transmitted his voice to Nietion. Nietion, be careful of the 2 people behind you. Their auras are not right. I know. Nietion responded and smiled confidently. He naturally knew that the people Zhong Mingyu was talking about were Lian Jiufeng and Qi Sha. These 2 guys were not easy to deal with. Nietion did not trust them. Next, Nietion took out the space-time sacred formation scroll that Ancestor's sacred heaven gave him and probed it with his divine sense. In an instant, he felt dozens of space-time points in the sacred world. They were all sacred worlds connected to the sword martial in the sky. Not long after, his divine sense locked onto the 7th cultivator of true virtue's sacred world. With a thought, he directly opened the scroll. Boom! The moment the space-time scroll opened, a huge space-time aura was released. The surrounding void trembled, and the power of heaven and earth changed. This space-time aura was very vast, but it was very gentle and did not have much impact on the surrounding space. Let's go. Nietion looked at Lian Jiufeng and the others and said lightly. Lian Jiufeng and Qi Sha glanced at each other and directly stepped into the space-time sacred formation. Nieton, Duanmu Lu, and the others also followed. Boom! Immediately after, the space-time sacred formation closed and the surrounding void trembled. Then, the entire formation disappeared. The figures of Nietion and the others also disappeared. Zhong Mingyu looked at the void in front of him and frowned, seemingly a little uneasy. Absolute Eagle King looked at Zhong Mingyu and asked nervously, Lord, will Lord Nieton and the others be fine in the 7th cultivator of true virtue's sacred world? He originally thought that Zhong Mingyu would let him accompany Nietion and the others to the 7th cultivator of true virtue's sacred world. Zhong Mingyu smiled bitterly and shook his head. We don't need to worry about Nietion. We should think about how to explain this to the 5 forces. Nietion had fused with the heart of the sky, but he did not go to the 5 forces. Zhong Mingyu had to think of a way to stabilize the 5 forces. At the same time, in the sky above the 7th cultivator of true virtue's sacred world, several figures stood in the sky with surprised expressions. These figures were Nietion and the others. They had successfully arrived at the 7th cultivator of true virtue's sacred world through the space-time sacred formation scroll. Is this the sacred world? Duanmu Lu couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at the endless majestic mountain range below. The others were also shocked. Clearly, they were shocked by the vastness of the sacred world. The mountain range here was clearly much larger than the other realms. Moreover, the trees were more lush, the space-time was more stable, and the space here was more vast. The sky was high and the earth was boundless. Everyone could clearly feel the oppressive power coming from the surrounding void.